After 7, let's call this regular board meeting of the Silver Falls School District to order. Please no attendance. Okay, please join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we got a full agenda tonight. Do I have a first item is our consent agenda. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, right now we'll open the hearing for the 2019 and 20 fiscal year budget. And now would be a time for anybody to comment on that budget if they'd like. From the public, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Shelley. Yeah. Okay, any public comment on the budget? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. I guess now would also be the proper time for our first public comment session. Would anybody like to just comment general purposes? Where's that statement that we read?
I did not.
Yeah.
Debbie's getting it right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll save it for the next one. We're lucking out because nobody wants to comment right now. So.
Oh, wait, no.
Oh, here we go. Okay, check's coming up. 3 minutes.
You bet.
We'll skip it and let you
Give me
go.
a 10-second warning. How's
Send for it.
I'm Chuck Sheketoff. I live on Tillicum Drive, and I signed in on the back. My purpose for talking at this comment period is to raise questions about why you're going into executive session. I don't believe you've given it adequate notice. You've cited the statute requires you to give the public notice of what topics are being discussed, and then for executive sessions, you have to do the additional thing of cite the statutory authority for doing it in an executive session. So for instance, I was told by the superintendent that you're going into executive session to talk with your lawyer about the settlement agreement on an arbitration. Well, you cite in here a statute which deals with current or pending litigation, not past litigation. So what's the litigation that you're going to be talking about? Are you being sued because of a car accident? Are you being sued because of a building problem? Or are you planning on suing because of that? You have to identify that. And the reason you have to identify that is because there's a law that says you can't talk off topic. And in fact, an example of that was the Jervis School District, where at an executive session was given notice about what they were going to talk about, and then a topic was added. They started berating a board member about comments she made about a policy. And a complaint was made to the Ethics Commission. They said that's not a topic subject to executive session, nor was it noticed. And so I just don't believe you can give it a notice. If it's to find out from your attorney what that settlement agreement means, if your superintendent doesn't have the confidence that he can explain that to you, then I think you should have explained in public so we can all learn. We can't learn from the superintendent just like you. We should all be able to learn from the district's attorney. And second, you cite that you're going to be discussing stuff that's not available to public. I don't know what that is. I believe, frankly, if it is the settlement agreement, I don't think there's anything in that. I can't imagine there's anything in that document that's not in what was and still is a public record, the complaint that was filed. I sent copies of that to each of you. It was online and then it was taken offline because it's no longer an active case with the Employment Relations Board. That's why they took it down. It's still a public record, and all the history of all the people and making phone calls and putting pressure on workers and whatnot, it's all in there. I can't imagine there's something in there that's not already there. So I would ask that you not go into executive session and encourage all of you to, if you do, to publicly at the executive session announce that you think it's wrong and leave. Otherwise, as board members, you're individually liable if you hold as individuals, if you engage in an executive session that's unlawful. You should know that. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. Okay, would anybody else like to comment?
My name is Scott Walker. I live at 717 Eureka. I'm here again also to talk about executive session. I've been on a number of boards and through trainings with executive session, and I think that the first point I want to make, it's really your option of whether you want to go into executive session or not. It's totally up to the board, okay? The second point I want to make is that, and it was just made earlier, if you get off the topic, the F or H you have in your agenda, then you're running into trouble, and you are individually liable as board members. It doesn't matter what advice you receive from other people, it's still on you. And the third point I'd like to make is that if you are in executive session and you feel like the subject is getting off of the stated goals, okay, what you need to do is say, I, blah, blah, feel as though this conversation has left 992.6661 or 2H or whatever it is, okay, and therefore I'm going to leave the room. You have to announce that so that the recording will excuse you from any issues that may develop because of that, okay? But I do want to point out, in a general sense, there's a lot of, how can I say, there's a level of distrust of the school board in the community. And operating an executive session when it's really not necessary engenders more distrust. So I would ask you to be as open as you possibly can be. Executive session makes sense if you're in labor negotiations. That totally agree with you. But in some situations, the categories are topics you could discuss before the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's January Rochlop. I live and pay taxes in Zone 7 of the district.
Can you please sign in, please?
I've signed
Oh,
in the
very good.
back
Thank you.
previously. How many of you believe Andy Blando has resigned? I'm asking the board to raise your hand if you believe he's resigned. I assume because none of you have raised your hand, you know he has not resigned. Is that correct? Should I assume that to be the case?
Yes.
So what was his letter of May 25 and the accompanying contract document that was with it? Excuse me, not May 25, June 5. That was not a letter of resignation because you all agreed he didn't resign. What it was a letter initiating a new contract negotiation of an entirely new contract. He's not talking about his old contract. He wants a new contract with all of you. And what does a new contract do? Well, potentially, a new contract erases any past experience that the board or the school district might have with him. He would be starting new and starting afresh. My view is that hiring a new superintendent of schools is probably one of the most important things that a school board does. And I would submit that hiring a new director who's made one offer, because that's what his letter was, that's what his presentation of his new contract, it wasn't something that had to do with the past, it has to do with everything going forward. What that is a first offer of a negotiation. Now, I don't know, I've spent about 47 years of my life involved in negotiations, and I hope there's somebody on this board that agrees that one of the rules of negotiation is, yes, you don't make the first offer, but he did, so you go to the next rule of negotiation, which is be really suspect about accepting that first offer. Now, I'm assuming, and the reason I would suggest that you not do that is that there is much to be decided in a contract. I would urge you to go thoroughly through this contract and compare it word for word with his former contract. My view is that if you sign this contract without understanding every word, what is here, including the section in 7, which makes this a renewable contract and makes it subject to the rules
Time's
of
up.
Senate Bill 1049.
Time's
Okay.
up.
Is there anyone that's on the signing list that would cede their time to me? Would that mean you can't talk?
Respect, we need to.
We don't do that.
We, that's.
Oh,
no,
well, I
that's-
don't understand
mean,
why. Is there a rule against that?
We
They do
have,
that, they do that.
Well,
in-
it was a retroactive, I mean, it's, no.
No,
If-
why,
if
why
you-
is it, why can't you see, why can't somebody that might want to speak
Never
cede
heard-
their time to someone else? You've never heard of doing that?
Oh, I've heard of that, but you asked if someone was on the sign-up sheet, and then someone volunteered to retroactively do it, so I'm
Oh,
gonna
so
be,
if
I'm
somebody
gonna
gets
play
up and
detail.
says, I don't want to talk,
If-
this
if-
woman
if-
can keep on
if that
talking
woman-
at you. She can.
I don't know, quite frankly, where.
You don't know
what-
the answer to that, I guess.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, this may be a
Your
good
time's
time
up.
for you to read
Yes,
the
and I'm
rules
gonna-
around
yeah,
presentations.
There we go. We didn't have this before, but I'm just gonna read this now.
So you're going to be told how to do this, right?
this is our policy. We read it every
This-
meeting. We just didn't have it at the
This is,
beginning
yeah,
of
this is our
public comment.
policy,
So I would suggest you sit down and listen to it.
and we read it
Might
every
learn something.
time. And we, in order for expediency, we waived it at the beginning of this period while Debbie went and got it. And now I'm gonna read it. We are glad, out of courtesy, we did that. We are glad you are here and welcome you to address the board at this time with your ideas, opinions, questions, concerns, or compliments. Be certain to sign in before you present. Remember that we all model the way for our students, and we ask that you share your thoughts in a respectful way. The board's role during public comment is to listen. Rarely will you get an immediate response to information. If there is follow-up necessary, we will direct our superintendent to do that. And I think this might be something, in order to ensure equity among speakers, the board will limit remarks to 3 minutes. If a group of 3 or more wishes to appoint a representative to speak on its behalf, the board will extend the time for remarks to 5 minutes. If you're representing a group with some prepared thoughts, you would have 5 minutes. A second public comment will occur later in the agenda, specific to discussion and action items of this meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can you repeat the bit about students?
Remember that we all model the way for our students, and we ask that you share your thoughts in a respectful way.
I think that for everybody in the room, that we all need to keep that in mind. So
Yes.
Thank you.
That's a good point.
Thanks, Jennifer. Okay, we respect your time, and I think we all understood the gist of your message that you were trying to, yeah, so would anybody else like to speak? Please.
Edward Clements, I did not sign in, but I can do it right now.
Please.
8512 Humpert Lane. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. We moved to this community in 2010. One of the sole purposes was to be involved in this school district. We moved from West Salem, and I wanted to express my appreciation to the entire leadership of the district, Mr. Belando, to your exemplary leadership over the years. We've been here 9.5, and we count ourselves very blessed to be able to send our children to school in this school district. And every administrator at the different schools we've been a part of have been absolute top, and it's been a great experience for our family. So I thank you for your leadership. I'll put my name down quickly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, would anybody else like to address the board? Yeah, please.
I didn't have anything to say, I did sign up.
Okay.
I want to address Mr. Roth, telling any adult in the room, no matter what board you are elected to sit down and listen, does not fall under the category of respectful speech towards people in the community. And with that, I'm going to give January Jones the rest of her time, the rest of mine, if you'll let me.
I don't know that. I mean, does anybody else have any input on this?
You know, I agree
I don't
with
got my Parley Pro book in here in front of me.
Well,
but-
Tom, but I mean, I think we get the gist of the message.
Yeah, I do.
There's nothing more that she's gonna add that it's going to enlighten me at this moment.
But I
At
gave
this
her my
moment.
time, so I hope you have a choice.
You don't have the authority to give your time at this point. If you would have listened earlier, we have a decorum to follow, and we're doing to the best that we can. Excuse me, hey,
Yeah,
let me say one more thing, you know. Again, this is a meeting in public. It's not a public meeting. It's not an oral debate between the audience and the board. We're conducting board business. We're acting like professionals. We're doing the best we can, but we do expect you to follow the same route. So when Jennifer emphasized the point, we're here for the kids. So let's act like that. You have to be responsible and be an example to why we're actually sitting in this room today. It's not about personal agendas. It's not about your political bend. It's about the kids. Let's act like it.
yeah, and I don't know, like I said, I don't have my parliamentary procedure book in front of me. I'm sure there's guidance for this. But I do know that the message you were trying to send is that we are walking in a, you are trying to let us know that we're walking through a minefield. And we've heard it. I've heard that.
I'm sorry, can you
I'm
hear what you said?
That you're worried about us, about the legal thing that we're doing. Or
No,
you're-
that's not at all what I was saying.
Well, negotiate,
And so obviously you didn't get the message.
There's a
And I-
second period, right?
well, there's a second, thank you, Jennifer.
And I will own asking somebody to sit down. I admit that was out of line, so.
Okay, would anybody else like to address the board?
My name's Nasim Raka. I was going to read something, and I will read something, but I have to first say, Mr. Vala, I find it incredibly ironic that a man who would just tell the public that we don't need to hear any more from a woman because we already know what she's going to say. That's insulting.
That is not what I said.
You can go back and listen to it if you want. Last year, my son, a senior, lost 2 teachers and a mentor, Ben Hindstone and Travis Williams, when this board voted to reject the teachers' claims of unfair labor practices. This board was presented with testimony and documentation laying out the teachers' grievances, but the board, at the guidance of the administration, turned its back on them. As a result, those 2 teachers took their cases to an arbitrator. I understand the district and the teachers have reached a settlement on one aspect of the grievance, and that the arbitrator has found in favor of the teachers on a separate grievance. If this is so, then you as a board have a problem, and that problem is that while you are considering the social, emotional, and financial costs of the decision on the entire district, you are also being asked to consider a proposal by our superintendent to both let him resign, collect his retirement, and continue working for a greater pay. It is no secret that this district suffers from a lack of trust. People are wary of a board which rarely appears to think independently from the superintendent and attempts to belittle and name-call those that do. People are aware of teachers who have left this district because they have felt bullied by the administration, aware of administrative salaries that appear to always grow at a faster rate than those of educators. People are aware that when they are offered just 4 tickets to a high school graduation, that board members were somehow able to get several times more. Your job is to protect and enrich the district and its kids, not the superintendent or yourselves. This is something I know each and every one of you hope to do. Yet our students lost 2 excellent teachers, one in college writing, the other in speech and debate, all because this board, in other words you, failed to see what an independent arbitrator apparently has. I urge you not to accept the superintendent's plan for a golden parachute. His contract stipulated that he asked for his retirement by April 15. That was nearly 2 months ago. He did not do that. Because of that, I hope you will either stick with the current contract, letting him serve out the next 2 years as agreed to last year at this time, or let him resign, so that the district can go about the job of finding a new superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you, Nasim.
I have a question. Is there going to be a second comment period for action action items, and should I wait till then if I want to address an action item?
Yes, there is.
Thank you.
Tom, can I say a couple things?
Go ahead, Tim.
I know we don't usually respond, or not as visitors, but when I hear things that are blatantly false, I feel like I need to correct that. As far as the arbitration, the board, we have not even heard the results of the arbitration. So the statement that the arbitrator found in favor of the teachers is false. We don't, well, I shouldn't say it's false, but we don't know that.
We don't know.
Nobody knows.
We haven't seen it.
We haven't seen it, so I don't know where that statement came from. Also, that the salary of administrators grows faster than our other employee groups. That is also not true. We do bargain with our administrators separately, but I've been on this board for 14 years. Every year, the administrators have taken the same that our licensed employees get, or less. So that administrator salaries don't grow any faster than anybody else's.
I can answer your first question.
No.
I didn't ask you a question.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'm gonna, wasn't gonna talk about it, but I will. My daughter graduated. My host's son also graduated. 2 kids. Do the math. Board members, that's 8. Board members also get 2 tickets. So it's a total of 10. There were 8 seats marked with the name Tom Buchholz on them reserved. We gave 2 tickets away. Would anybody else like to address the board? And furthermore, I'd like guidance from the high school next year. I have a junior right now. She will be a senior next year. We're also getting another host daughter from Europe next year. I'm hoping, I'm looking forward to graduating 2 kids from Silverton High School next year. Please proceed.
Hi, I didn't sign in and I don't know where the sign-up sheet went, but my name is Eliza Torlin and I'm on Abaquah Road. I just wanted to talk about the strategic visioning plan that you guys are going to be working on. I noticed that the indicator 1C section where you discuss whether each student will achieve their appropriate academic growth. I just wanted to reiterate a point that Jonathan made of making sure that you also work to identify high-achieving students and make sure that they are also given the opportunity to exceed the expectation, whether they are listed as talented and gifted or not. If the student is a high-achieving student, I think that they should be encouraged to push beyond the general expectations that are given to them in their classroom. Thank you.
Can I
Thank you.
respond to you quickly?
Yes, please.
Okay. Ms. Torlin, I was going to respond to you really quick. I think in the last work session that we had when we were talking with Jerry Colonna, I think Director Traeger had mentioned something of that kind of language, if I recall correctly.
I think that they discussed doing it. I just wanted to reiterate that I
Okay.
think that beyond talented and gifted, you need
Right.
to look at high-achieving students.
Right, exactly. Yeah, okay. And thank you for that. So just wanted to connect with that.
Yeah, and I just want to I'm sorry, feeling a little salty here lately. I want to follow up a little bit on my comment of that with the high school. I believe in site-based decision-making. Whatever the decision makers and their processes at the high school decide next year is, I would like their guidance for next year. I don't want to hear about it now. Whatever they decide is what I will gladly abide to when it comes to graduation. I don't know if I'll be board chair or whatnot, but whatever they suggest is what I will abide to, and I would like maybe a little guidance and clarification at some point in the future. Thank you. Because I don't want to do this again. I got 2 kids walking across that stage next year.
We can turn the microphones up.
Oh, sorry. I don't think I don't think the microphones, do they broadcast or
They
they're
do.
just?
You'll have to speak closer to the microphone.
Okay, sorry. I just looking for the high school guidance for next year, however process they would like to do it, I will abide to, because I've got 2 kids walking across the stage. Thank you. Hope to, anyway. Okay, next.
I'm already sent in.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Wilder. I live at 408 Lone Oaks Loop, Silverton. I would like to thank this board for demonstrating the ways in which social emotional learning can benefit our children at Silver Falls School District, as well as the adults who are making decisions for those children via policy. I'm going to remind you and give you the definition of social and emotional learning. It's an umbrella term that refers to students' acquisition of skills to recognize and manage emotions, develop care and concern for others, make responsible decisions, establish positive relationships, and handle challenging situations effectively. During the last school board meeting, Mr. Valoff used the term ignorant to address Shelley Nealon several times. She was consequently chastised and bullied with gaslight techniques in a clear display of pack mentality. Whether silent or joining in with this verbal bullying, all of you should understand how this looked to us, the audience. Shameful and unprofessional. The exchange did include an apology, but missing from the apology was any indication of genuineness or an attempt to make amends, both of which are critical in social emotional learning to establish trust. So, the audience witnesses yet another example of the ways that denial, fear, ego, and contempt manifest in dysfunctional group dynamics. It was embarrassing. Thank you for another example. And you owe us, the audience, the stakeholders, an apology. The checklist of social emotional skills include self-management skills, appropriate emotional expression. That does not include name calling. Self-awareness skills, awareness of one another's feelings, fairness, equity, responsible decision-making skills, choose your words carefully, analyzing the choices for the best possible outcome, and relationship skills, respond to mistakes and mishaps appropriately and genuinely.
30 seconds.
I feel quite certain that you can all learn these skills. I urge you to begin regaining or gaining our collective trust by walking your talk.
Thank you.
Could I respond to that, please?
Yeah, please.
First, thank you for coming and sharing the information about social and emotional learning. The one thing I want to say is this volunteer position, it can get very difficult at times. I want to say that Mr. Valoff and I have had more good conversations than we have had not. And I believe that he was sorry when he said that. And I just want to say that we've moved on from that. And we've reset the button. And we have to do that sometimes often in these positions.
Yes, we do.
As a director of this board, I want to apologize if we've made our stakeholders uncomfortable. I am here to work with my board members in a professional, educated capacity, and I will continue to do that for my 2 years. So as far as Director Valoff goes, for me, it's all good. And we're moving on, and we're going to be good about it. But I thank you for your support. I thank you for explaining all of that to us. I think it was a good choice to say that right now.
Perfect.
And we can all take a check on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Shelley. Tom, do you mind if I follow up real quick? Okay.
Please.
Elizabeth, were you here when that occurred?
I watched it on tape.
No, but were you here in person?
No?
Okay. And the reason I ask that is and Shelley's right. I love Shelley and her family. I really do. She brings a lot to the board. She's got a lot of great insight and wisdom, but that doesn't mean I necessarily always agree with Shelley or maybe the delivery or anyone else on the board. We're not going to be in 100% agreement. However, I'm human, I'm fallible, I make mistakes. I wasn't appointed to the board because I was perfect. I was appointed from my point of view. So I do represent some people in the community and some people it's obviously that I don't. But I do make mistakes, and I am not afraid to admit when I do make a mistake. And as I did in the meeting, Elizabeth, yeah, I said a word that I did regret. I really did. But I also made a sincere apology to Shelley, number one, and to those in the audience. And it was sincere. And the reason I asked if you were here in person, because oftentimes it's not going to translate on video compared to being in person. So, yeah, I think you're a little bit misguided in the fact of understanding my true, sincere intention without really knowing me or being there in person, but I do understand the concern. And yes, we as a board, we have a responsibility to everyone in this district, including you in the audience, including those that aren't here, including our students, administrators, teachers. I mean, it's a big responsibility. You know, our public education now is asked to be social media changers. They're asked to be the parents of these children. They're asked to be the educators in a ever-increasing, speedily world, which we're just trying to get a grasp on social media. The education on social media sometimes is much more powerful than what we can do in person. So there's a lot of responsibility here. There's a lot of mistakes, but we try to do our best. And I think we do a fantastic job as evidenced by the numbers, by the black and white numbers that show the success of our school district. But yet, just wrapping this all up, you're right. Apologize again. If there's anyone here that didn't hear my apology, again, I love Shelley Newman and her family. She's fantastic. And Jennifer, and Tom, and Tim, and Jonathan, and there's a whole lot of love in this room. But yeah, I make mistakes. I don't know if that's ever gonna change. But I'll do my best going forward. So thanks for bringing that to my attention again.
Okay. Thanks, both of you. Thank you, guys. Okay, anybody else?
Hi there, Aaron Cook, 515 West Main Street. We have three folks here between two of our board members and one of our staff members this is our last board meeting. And I just wanted to take a few moments just to express, I know my gratitude. I don't want to speak for necessarily anybody else in the room, but I'll speak for my family. And just want to say thank you, Dandy, for your service to the district. I wish you all nothing but the best at Jervis. Being an assistant superintendent or superintendent's not an easy job. And we really appreciate what you've done for the district and wish you all the best in your next step. So congratulations on that. And then to our board members, to Tim, I didn't know the exact number of years you had been. I was going to say over a decade, but now you answered the question. It's 14, so that's a long time on the board. And Ron, for your 4 years of service, being able to sit where you sat, I know it's not an easy task. It's a thankless job. You get a lot of criticism, as we've heard tonight, which is good and healthy. And I just want to say thank you to both for really you've been models in our community to our students by your conduct, by your demeanor, by your involvement as board members, and you've taken a lot of flack and weathered the storms quite well. I'm proud to call three of you as here in this, and as many of you here are friends, but I can say I've learned a lot from the three of you, and have been mentored by the three of you in some capacity over the last several years. So I just wanted to express my gratitude, my family's gratitude to your years of service here to the Silver Falls School District. It's a better place because all three of you have been here. So thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, before we move on to discussion items, Shelley whispered me a suggestion. It's looking like a long meeting. Does it make sense to have possibly postpone the principals, their presentations? I don't know if that works to reschedule them. I mean, it's kind of a quick thing to do. They're off next month. You're here, huh?
They're going, sure.
I
Okay.
guess we can give them the option. My thought was, I don't want you to sit here and have to be short, I want you to be able to give all of your presentation. That's, yeah.
Good enough. It was just a suggestion, then they're
Just a
here.
suggestion. Okay.
Okay.
Your other option is you could ask them to go sooner than later. If you chose to do that, there may be some advantage to that. You could.
Yeah, we gotta get
We don't need, we need to hear some of that, so,
You have school
so bear with
tomorrow,
us.
so we just didn't want to
Okay.
keep you late. Okay.
Okay, let's keep moving then. Discussion items. Okay. First one is item A, 2019-20, our draft strategic visioning plan. It's a discussion item and is it an action item later tonight?
Not an action.
Not an action item, just discussion. Okay.
I just wanted to respond to Ms. Torland's suggestion. And to me, I don't have it, oh, I do have it right in front of me.
I just saw your draft.
the edit is in there.
The edit's in there already.
Okay, so, I think, what was goal, or Eliza, remind me
It's
again?
1C.
1C.
Page 20.
Yeah, so each student will achieve their appropriate academic growth. So that does, to me, seem like everybody. I think that the strategies that are listed are not necessarily exhaustive, but those are the ones that the district has decided to emphasize. And so I think it's a legitimate idea to make sure that, the high achieving kids meet their targets too, which I think that is included in indicator 1C, and we will be holding our administrator accountable for everybody, including the high achievers. And so to me, I guess I'm not concerned that that's not going to happen, but I think that this document is read by a lot of people, and they don't necessarily have that, they weren't there at our discussion, and they don't know that we're gonna be looking at all students necessarily. So it's just something to consider. I get the point.
Are you looking at the updated version, or are you looking at?
The one that's in front of me,
The
that Debbie
original
put
draft.
in front of me.
Yeah, so there were changes made specifically to the draft.
Oh,
Based
okay.
on my comments in red, and
There we go.
I was very satisfied with those.
There we go.
May I just say that I feel like I learned that through watching your board meeting, that, it's easier to get funding for low achieving students than it is for high achieving students. And I understand that. So, and I feel that my school does a good job at trying, but I do have a child who, memorized the STAR test 3 years ago and is still being given it every other month, So it's just like, it would be great to know that there could be a few more options for kids who are talented, that somehow we could find funding somewhere to just, really push them.
Okay, thanks, but we're trying to have a discussion with the audience, no worries. I mean, it's, okay.
Just to chime in a little bit on that, to piggyback on what Jennifer said, I think in my thought is I'd like to direct our superintendent to provide data that includes this as well. So it'll be hopefully more specific. I'm not sure what that looks like or how that could be implemented when I talk to our fellow board members, and hopefully they'll agree with me, I don't know, but it would be nice to have specific data, and maybe I don't know that we already have it, but since we have that in here, now we'll be keeping more of an eye on it, so, yeah, okay.
And I want to say, I agree with Jennifer that the indicator itself is broad enough, right? That
Right.
it could go any of a number of directions.
Right.
I think the strategies for implementation are good. It sounded like, based on our interactive discussion last meeting,
that those are also evergreen. And so we can modify those as we see fit
Right.
throughout the year, throughout the years of this 5-year plan, in any way that we need to address specific concerns raised by parents, teachers, board members, et cetera.
Or the data.
Or the data, yeah.
That's a crucial point, yeah. And knowing that we can change this as we move along and go along, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm happy with these changes too. I think that they weren't absolutely necessary, but I think if it communicates better with our stakeholders, then that's good.
I like the whole thing. I think it's good. I like the goals, I like the district values, I like the visions, and once again, I want to say thank you to the people that worked so hard on this, because they did a really good job. And this was a really positive thing for our district the last 5 years, and I think this is going to be the same way, so thank you.
Just a statement.
About strategic?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, yeah, go for it, Shelley, please.
So I just have a real quick statement that I wrote up. I just would like to thank the committee and Jerry Colonna for implementing the proposed language changes the board expressed at the last work session. As the board mentioned last work session and agreed upon, not an action item, just taken in discussion, I'd still like to delay this to the July board meeting to be an action item to give the new board the opportunity to get familiar with the document. So I just wanted to reiterate our discussion decision last month at our work session, so that's what I have to say.
I have no opposition whether we vote on it tonight or in a month. I don't, it
Well,
doesn't matter to me.
it's definitely not an action item tonight,
Yeah.
but I just wanted to refresh that discussion decision from last month. That way we didn't forget, you know, what was
Right.
talked about.
Good
So,
point.
yeah, that's it.
Do you guys know, or Andy, when is it slated to be an action item to be approved?
It's not. You asked that
Okay.
it be postponed until at least January, which is what we're doing.
You mean
Or July, excuse me, Jay. One of the J's, July, thank you.
That's a long time.
At least July, which is
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, sounds great.
Did I miss that?
Okay,
Do you want to
Okay.
post it so you can actually look?
So we'll see.
okay. Okay, anybody else have any comments about the visioning plan? Okay. Moving on. The summer board extended work sessions, 2 of them in August. I guess we were gonna talk about some topics. Does anybody have any, did we hit, I wasn't here at the last work session, but do we have a list of topics started? Or did we, I know you've been keeping a list kind of as we go.
Yeah, you'd asked for me to coordinate with Oregon School Boards Association, specifically Renee Sessler, and she's available on those 2 days. We have her contracted for that time, and she'll be here for 3 hours each session. It'll be roles and responsibilities, especially since you have 2 new board members. It'll be a good refresher for you as existing board members as well, and she'll be presenting on both of those. I did ask her to include some communication around policy and communication, I believe, were the other 2 topics, and she says there's plenty of that incorporated within the full workshop. So if you have it, I did let her know that there may be some refinement of the request over the course of the next couple of months. So if that's the case, just let me know and we'll make it happen.
Is the working agreement and looking at it and making changes if necessary part of our contract with Renee?
She will include that in board roles and responsibilities. To what extent, Jennifer, I'm just recalling that last year, the year before, she did take a pretty deep dive into that and have you
Last
review it.
2 years, I think
Yes.
we've done it, so it was helpful for me. It'd probably be helpful for the new board members as well.
Yeah, Jennifer, I'm gonna piggyback on what you said. At the Scotch Mills work session, you talked about redoing the superintendent's evaluation process, and we roll that in, just take another breeze through it. As I use it, it works. I have some opinions about it, about ways to make it better, and it sounds like you do too.
I'd be happy to talk to Renee ahead of time to tell her to summarize the discussion that we've had. I think basically it was around the
Yeah.
scoring points and what they
Yes.
actually mean, and just comparing our document to the one that OSBA recommends. They're very close, but then there's those descriptors that OSBA has that we don't. I'd be happy to give her a heads up on that and just say, this is what we're wondering about.
Yeah, I assume that that fits within her roles and her specialty. I mean, we can modify it ourselves, but, so, okay.
But you could at least tell us what her.
Yeah, we can
opinion is.
follow up on that, but, so.
I'd like to make a suggestion
Yeah.
for a topic. Based on some discussion we've had tonight and in the last weeks, I think executive session might be a
Oh, yes.
a particularly
I was gonna say that before you
useful topic of discussion. I, for one, as a new board member, am not completely up with it. I've read
Yeah.
some, but I'm certainly no expert. So.
Yeah,
Good one. Okay, anybody else?
that was mine.
Better add another night? Yeah. It's getting long. Okay. Okay, next topic. The annual evaluation of the superintendent report. Set our back clock so it didn't get lost. I'll read this. We had executive session in May, and I'll read the summation of this. Silver Falls School District Superintendent Evaluation for the 2018-19 school year. During our May work session, during executive session, the Silver Falls School Board shared and discussed our individual evaluation summaries and scores with our superintendent, Andy Belando. The following is a summary of those scores and written comments. I oftentimes use written comments almost verbatim from the comments provided in that session. Sometimes I captured the tone of the comments and the discussion and then use my own words. Standard 1, leadership and district culture, scored 3.4 out of 4. You always refer back to strategic visioning plan and goals in decision-making and use district values as a guide. Good efforts toward equity, definition, and tailoring it to fit our district. Andy does a great job pushing and striving for a positive climate at each of our schools, especially as it relates to kids. Standard 2, policy and governance, 3.3 out of 4. You always keep the board updated, respect board decisions, and offer good guidance. Not afraid to use district attorneys if needed. Andy does have a tremendous understanding of our policies and legal requirements. But to someone new to the board, he can appear to be trying to set the narrative of the board. Standard number 3, communication and community relations, 3.4 out of 4. Communication about district vision is very good. He continues to communicate clear goals and how he can achieve them, always increasing opportunities to keep the public informed. Great improvements over the past few years. Area for improvement is for conflict resolution and working more patiently with people he disagrees with. Standard number 4, organizational management, 3.5 out of 4. Good work gathering data, analyzing it, and using it for decision-making. Great budget management and explanations to the public. Great decision to use the additional budget Q&A sessions for budget committee members to ask more in-depth questions. Details of the district are cared for on a daily basis. Standard 5, curriculum planning and development, 3.3 out of 4. Good use of data to make assessments. Great to see the new social study curriculum adopted. Music and arts could use some attention in how our buildings teach it. You and your team did a great job of explaining it, but another pass at that topic might not hurt. Instructional leadership, 3.4 out of 4. Student safety is of utmost concern to you. It is a key element of this standard. Standard 7, human resources leadership, 3.1 out of 4. Human resources is one of your tougher job descriptions. You do a good job at it. You are willing to make hard decisions when necessary, and it is necessary. A skill to work on is building bridges with those upset with those tough calls you must make. Standard 8, values and ethics of leadership, 3.4 out of 4. Not many comments that I had to build a statement from, so I'll let this score speak for itself. Standard 9, labor relations, 3.7 out of 4. Highest score of all the standards. Labor relations have been a challenge this year, and you handled it well. Grievances and arbitrations are a challenge, but you handled them well to the best possible outcome for all the stakeholders, the students, the staff, and the community. Standard 10, district goals, 3.6 out of 4. The second highest score of these standards for ongoing equity work, strategic plan renewal, work on the K-5, and work on the in-town K-5 school configuration. You did a great job for the students and parents of the Silver Falls School District. Thank you for your service. And I'll give these to you very much. Okay, thanks, Andy. Okay, any other discussion items? Shelley?
I have other items.
Go for it.
Yes, on my other items. I wanted to bring up the Equity Policy Committee that we had in place last year and talk about the work that Director Buchholz and Director Traeger were working on. I did not know that when we directed Andy to instruct the Strategic Visioning Committee to encompass the idea and language into our strategic visioning plan, that it meant the committee and our work towards an equity policy for our district was going to be eliminated. I was wondering if we could have discussion about this moving forward.
Well, I don't see any reason why we couldn't, for starters. We've talked about an equity lens in the past. I think there's still conversation that could be had around there. I don't think anything in the strategic vision precludes any separate equity policy or equity lens. Does anybody, any of the other board members disagree? I mean, it doesn't seem like it precludes that.
No,
I wasn't aware that we had kind of canceled it. I thought it was just kind of put
Yeah,
on hold
that's-
for a little while and was
Yeah,
going to be worked on over the next few months.
Right, I mean, I guess, well, that's what my, I mean, yeah, that's, was my question, is I didn't know that it was, the committee was dismantled. It was done. But I don't remember discussing, doing that. I think it was just kind of a, you know,
Our conversation
we
went
kind of had a
nowhere.
dead end. Right, and so that's why I was bringing it back up, to see if we wanted to pursue our original idea and listen to multiple people who have come to speak to us about that, having an equity policy in our district. I remember there was a lot of test or public comment about that. So I wasn't sure how we wanted to, if we wanted to continue to pursue that. I just want to talk about it. But-
I'm happy to talk about it in
Yeah.
a future meeting.
Okay, great. Okay,
Yeah, perfect.
okay.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, let's move on to the next topic. High school graduation and the end of the school year information. Andy?
Yeah, I'll make this brief. This is just a placeholder. It's a special time of year. Many of you were able to celebrate Silverton High School graduation last Thursday night. It was an incredibly special event with about 300 students qualifying for what comes next. I thought the valedictorian and salutatorian's addresses were incredibly powerful. I especially appreciated the personal reflection, especially of one of our immigrant students who spoke an incredible piece of work, not only to the entire audience, but very personally to his family. Anyway, lots of great messages taken away from that. I also want to give credit to Wade Lockett and his staff for organizing graduation. I've attended that for many, many years, and this has got to be one of the more powerful events of the year, and clearly they met that standard of expectation once again. I really appreciate Wade's effort at recognizing Dick Ford, World War II veteran, last known living pilot, to have carried troops into the beaches of Normandy on D-Day, and what a special connection that was for him to be able to make that on the anniversary of D-Day and to have him in the audience with us. I think there were plenty of lumps in throats when that happened, and it's full standing ovation for Mr. Ford. So that was an incredible connection. Otherwise, we wrap up the school year this Thursday. Last day for kids, last day for staff is this Friday. It's been another successful school year. I look forward to seeing some of the data again as we look at reviewing the 2018-19 school year, and I look for lots of positive growth, and of course, plenty of areas that we can continue to focus on, and you'll be right in the center of that conversation as we move ahead. Just as a quick reminder, we do have a couple of summer schools happening at Silverton High School this year. We have 3 sites for our summer lunch program at Mark Twain Elementary, at the City Park in Silverton, and also at Silverton High School. We have plenty of maintenance projects, 2 full seismic upgrades occurring this summer, one at Mark Twain Elementary, the other one at Silverton Middle School, and lots of great things happening. So I wanted to be certain that you heard directly from me as we reflect a little bit on the year, and more reflection to come. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, hey Andy, being we're on the topic, I was going to talk about it later, the high school the high school graduation, and I asked you for some specifics in an email, and other topics came up, and I completely forgot about it. I attended the senior awards ceremony where scholarships are awarded, and they detail many of the college scholarships and all kinds of scholarships, but as I sat there and watched these kids, what really floored me was the amount of money that this local Silverton clubs donate. Like, what was the number? Do you have that? 300 and some?
Yeah, it was local scholarships. I believe were around $370,000
In local scholarships. They were handing out $1,000 scholarships like it was an Oprah show. You get a scholarship, you get a scholarship. It was ridiculous. It was amazing. I mean, great job, Silverton. I'm serious. All those clubs need a shout out. It was amazing. So that was good. And then there was another one that amazed me, the description. I can't forget the young man's name, the Ford Scholarship. Does anybody know the name? 4,000 applications apply for this scholarship. Only 125 kids in Oregon, rural parts of Oregon and Northern California get this. 4,000 applications, 125 scholarships. Eduardo got one, full ride. 4-year, full ride scholarship. Nailed it. Quite amazing. It was just quite a really amazing week going through all that. So, anyway, wanted to piggyback on your topic to.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thanks for representing us.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, you bet. Anybody else? Okay. Next up, financial report and resolution for transfer of appropriation to the general fund, fiscal year 2018-19. Steve? Yeah.
I'll speak for Steve. Steve apologizes that he can't be here. He had some personal matters that came up today, and he was very, very sorry. With that said, though, he's shared with you the financial report, and I can surely answer any questions as I can, but can direct those back to Steve if you have any specific questions related to that. I will share with you that Steve is incredibly attentive to the financial needs of this school district, and he identified a few weeks ago about the likelihood of our 2000 series budget for the 2018-19 school years being over budget, and our 1000 series, which is instruction, being under budget. And so as a result of that, he's anticipating that could be as high as $140,000 difference. And those are largely because of things like we've added 2 routes this year for student needs, so 2 bus routes, which are expensive. We also had some unanticipated maintenance needs and support services. That's the 2000 series that Steve is referring to. So while there's no increase to the budget, there's no increase to the general fund. This is not a supplemental budget. Board action is required for you to shift money from one series to another in anticipation. We won't even know for certain whether this is going to occur until after the audit is complete, but Steve, again, in his anticipatory way, wants to be certain that you do not have a finding on your audit by not doing this in the first place. So that's the purpose of the resolution, to transfer these dollars prior to the end of this fiscal year.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, seeing none, moving on. Well, that didn't take as long as I thought. Kirsten, why don't you come on up and talk to us about Scotts Mill School?
So we
Oh, sorry.
make that resolution at the end.
Yes, sorry.
I just
It is an
can't-
action item at the end, I'm sorry.
I just can't find the actual paper. I'll find it by then.
Yes, a single page, very close to the other resolution.
Okay, in the back. Got it.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have some technology issues because this isn't fitting in any. Sorry. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to bail on the presentation. But reschedule. But there's really good stuff to share here, and I definitely think it's timely as we're approaching the end of the year. Sometimes we gotta reflect on the great stuff the last week of school. Can we get going here? Need my assistant.
I see the Jaguar.
All right, so the Jaguar, we see it. Okay.
There it is.
Coming, here it comes. All right, so finishing up another great year at Scotts Mills. It's my 4th year. I always feel like that year 4 is always a great one. First year, you're not so sure what's going on. Second year, you start figuring it out. Third year, and then here we are in year 4. It's been a great year. We got lots of good stuff happening. We had our 8th grade promotion on Friday. It was awesome. It was really fun. You'll see some highlights from that here. We had a banner year. Our bingo, our Scotts Mills Bingo Silent Auction raised $16,000 this year. So for our little community, that's a great fundraiser for us. And something I'm really celebrating, and I hope I'm not jinxing myself, is we have no staff changes going into next year. So that's really exciting to keep, same staff is coming in, and it's just good things are happening and we're rolling along. So Scotts Mills, here's some highlights, pictures of kids. That's always a good feeling. Isabella Froloff is a student, 7th grader, and she won 3rd place in the state in the Elks essay contest, Why I'm Proud to Be an American Essay. And so that was really exciting. The Elks, gentleman from the Elks showed up and celebrated that with her. We have some pictures from the CTE showcase at the high school, and I just want to shout out the high school staff that put that together. It's amazing. Kids come back excited about high school, not as scared about high school, and they're like, you know, they make little things. I'm not sure what they were making in the Weldon area. They were making all these things that they made, and like they just had a great time. That's just a really great thing for our 8th graders. And then we had the Bunny Hop Bingo, Bunny Hop Boogie in April. Someone had to put the bunny costume on. Unfortunately, that was my other duty as assigned for April. So looking at our strategic plan, this year, admin, when we made our budget presentations, really like doing really similar presentations. So Leslie and I thought we'd try doing a similar presentation for the board to kind of give you the same message. Leslie gets the credit for the organization of this because she did it. But looking at the strategic plan, we have each student on track to graduate every year. So at Scotts Mills, I'll touch on the math and reading data here next. Our attendance rate is 93.4. We had a couple students who were having some difficult time with attendance the last few years that we've really brought up. We're still, great if all of them had great attendance, but 93.4 is definitely something to celebrate. Our data team process, 3 years ago, we started a new data team process to look at student data every 6 weeks, and that's been great, and we're seeing great success with that. And then our care team process, we've really streamlined district-wide and in our building to really make sure the interventions are happening when they're needed for our students, so that's been really great. Social emotional learning, our PBIS, we're in year 4. This year we started the PlayWorks recess program, which I talked about earlier in the year, but that's been a great asset to our building. It was kind of scary because it was a bit of an investment to make for the training, but it has been amazing. Our recess incidents that happen at recess have decreased tremendously. So that's been a great addition to our building. And then the SEL year 1, this year was year 1 of our SEL curriculum. It's been great. We're looking forward to working on that for next year, and now we have a year under our belt. And then our facility, we have the new front buzzer, which is still a little challenging for everybody. You have to wait till the green light, but it's really great security measure for us. We're fully fenced. We have the gates in the front that are locked. And then we're working on our signage, just updating signage, making it, we need some newer signs and for safety and security. So that's all great additions to Scotts Mills. Looking at our data, here's our kindergarten early literacy. 81% of our kinders are at or above grade level going into 1st grade, which is great. And then through our data team, we already are working on plans to provide these interventions needed for those students who aren't on grade level in 1st grade. I have a quick thank you. The kindergarten team wanted to thank the district for providing the other half-time kinder teacher this year. So our kinders, there was 26. That's a lot of 5-year-olds in a classroom. So we had a half-time teacher that did mornings, so we were able to provide reading and math instruction. I am going to, because 13 5-year-olds is a little bit easier than, never mind, I'm not going to show you the video. We had a video of students, kindergarten readers, students reading, but I can send those to you guys for your, I don't have the internet connection. 1st through 4th star data, we have great things are happening. Our 1st graders, each and every one of our 1st graders is on track. 100% of our 1st grade, this is 1st through 4th together, but 100% of our 1st grade is on track in reading and math going into 2nd grade. So Mrs. Lawton, the 2nd grade teacher, is going to have a great start to her year next year. It's really great. You kind of see how the data's gone out. We still students needing some interventions, but our data team and care team process has helped us to provide those early and get those students on track. fifth through eighth grade, also great things happening. Big celebration is 100% of our eighth graders are on track in math going to high school next year. So they're all at grade level.
Wow.
Going to, I'm looking for Johnny up back there, going into high school, so that's great for math as well. Couple more fun pictures. We have our Pioneer Day at the bottom there. You see those are our first graders. They surprised our third and fourth graders as they were buffalo, and they stampeded their Pioneer Day Oregon Trail walk. So that was really fun. The teachers knew, but their fourth grade students didn't. It was very fun. Yeah, it was great. We have some science pictures there. We had a great year. We had science teacher for 5th through 8th, so they had a science period, and that was so neat. We had real microscopes, and she was going to try Bunsen burners, but we went without that. It's been really great to have a science period for our middle school kids. And then I have 2 of our teachers dressed up there we had superheroes of reading during Read Across America Week. Track meet, some of our sweet kinders. JAG of the Week, we recognize students each week for JAGs of the Week at our flagpole. Those are 8th graders. There's some pictures. Mr. Buckholtz came and handed out diplomas. That's always neat for kids. We have a fancy picture of them. I'm not sure why. I think they're all being angels maybe in the picture in the back. I'm not sure. And then them around the Scotts Mills sign. Very special night. It's really personalized to the kids. It's very neat. One thing we did this year also was the first year, I'm sure you've seen it on the news, where you invite your former students to come back, alumni. So we had invited all the 16 alumni from Scotts Mills that graduated from Silverton High School. We invited them back. What we didn't think about when we scheduled this was it was the day after graduation. So they had their all-night party. So that was but we had these 5 amazing boys that went to school at Scotts Mills that showed up on Friday morning at 11 a.m., looking very tired, but they were there in their caps and gowns, and they came and we spent about 15 minutes in the library visiting with our 8th graders about high school, and then they walked the halls, and I'm really bummed because I'm not connecting on the internet here, and we have a video of it. But all of our students lined the hallways, and they walked from the office to out through the middle school area. Our 8th graders walked first, and then the high school kids walked after, and the students were cheering and clapping. It was very neat, and then it was really actually special for those teachers who had those kids at Scotts Mills. And so that's a picture of Helen Flove, our PE teacher, with those 5 students. So it was I think next year we'll probably maybe not do it the day after the graduation party. But it was fun. 5 out of 16 isn't horrible, but probably if they had slept the night before, there might be more there. So, so that's Scotts Mills.
All right, well, thank you.
Questions? Thank you.
Any questions?
I just want to make a quick
I tried
comment.
to whiz through that, sorry.
So Principal Jorgensen,
Yeah.
over the last 4 years, I've watched the progression of Scotts Mills, and under your guidance, it's been some phenomenal results. So I just want to thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
that you've
It's a
done.
pretty great place to work, so it's an easy job.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Good job. Yep.
Okay, Leslie Roach with Robert Frost School.
Okay, Robert Frost. So like Kirsten shared, we kind of worked together to make this presentation, so it looks pretty similar. So Robert Frost, just a reminder, grades 3 through 5, we have currently 424 students enrolled. You'll notice on this page we have some amazing students pictured, and right there in the center is a picture from our spring music performance. We had a fabulous music store do a donation of ukuleles, a class set of ukuleles for us this year, so we were able to play multiple instruments at our music performance this year, as well as sing, and it was a fabulous time. So Robert Frost, reflecting on our strategic plan. You can see each student on track to graduate. I will share our STAR data as well in the next few slides. Our attendance rate is sitting at about just 94%, a little over that. We also are using data teams this year. Because we are 5 teachers at each grade level, we sub out. We have subs come for those teachers, and we're able to sit together for 2 hours at a time and go through all of our students' data 4 times during the year to respond, to make sure that they are getting the interventions or the enrichment that they need to be successful for reading, math, behavior, attendance, all of that. The second goal, each student has the social and emotional learning skills to navigate their world. We are in year 4 of implementing PBIS, positive behavioral intervention and supports. Year 1 of Playworks as well, which has just been a fabulous experience. My recess staff just loves it. And then again, year 1 of our SEL Caring School Community curriculum. We also have a full-time counselor, and we have a Trillium therapist on site 2 days a week to support our students and families. And we are moving towards PE every day next year in order to meet the state requirements. So we have the privilege of having 2 full-time PE teachers next year, which is fabulous. Jenny Matska and Jake Garrick will be those folks. And I just want to highlight these pictures right here. This was day 1 of our new walking track installed out on the field. All the way around the field, the PTC, which Jenny and Jake are a huge part of, and their hard physical labor the last 2 Saturdays in order to get this track filled in. It just is fabulous, and it's a 1/3 of a mile. So if you want to go take some laps around some baseball games in the evening or soccer in the fall, it's just a wonderful experience up there. So I would encourage you guys to all go check it out. And we also, going down to goal 3, each school facility reflects the excellence of our education in our district. Besides our track, thanks to our fabulous PTC, we also have our field and playground is now completely fenced and locked during the school day, and our new front entry buzz-in system has also been installed. We were up and running pretty early in the school year, so we got to test it out for a bunch of other schools. And it's always look for the green flashing light when you're trying to get into a school building now. I also just want to say thank you to the fabulous team at Robert Frost. We have a librarian who's teaching wonderful technology classes and looking at integrating more coding and robotics next year in response to our parents and what they're wanting for their kids. We have a fabulous team of interventionists, a math specialist, a reading specialist, our school cooks, our custodian, our amazing special education staff, and all of our classified staff. Many folks are here tonight supporting me as I'm here with you, and I also have a lot of fabulous parents in the room. So I just want to say thank you. We are an amazing team. I value them, and I hope that they all have a fabulous summer, and we'll see them again in the fall. So STAR, reading and math. We are doing pretty well with our 3rd grade. We have about 66% of our 3rd graders ending in May at grade level, and about 11%, so 14 kiddos we're really working with and setting. We met last week in our data team, and we have some really solid plans for those kids to start the school year next year. And 3rd grade math is at 71% at benchmark, and just seven kids we're trying to get out of urgent intervention in math. 4th grade reading, 73% are at benchmark, and 4th grade math, 83% are at benchmark. So our STAR scores are looking really good with this group of 4th graders. And then for 5th grade, 65% are at grade level for reading, and 80% of those kiddos are at grade level for math. So we're hoping to send this group up to the middle school with some really solid math skills. They are all walking to visit the middle school tomorrow, so that's going to be a fabulous experience for them to get rid of some nerves, to know what they're expecting for middle school. So that's Robert Frost. Any?
Yeah, I do. You know what, and Kirsten, I could ask you the same question. I wasn't sure, but one of the goals that was listed on the first page was, all students on track to graduate. And what I'm curious is, when we get to the tables, are some of those columns kids that you consider on track and some not? I mean, is it just the final column that would be considered not, or how do you categorize that?
So for our Robert Frost team, we love to see everyone at benchmark or above. On watch is right there. It's a bubble kiddo that probably is on track to graduate. It's the intervention and urgent intervention columns that we're really concerned about, and what our processes, honestly, what most of these 14 3rd graders that are in urgent intervention have gone through our data team and care team process, and we're starting to look at learning disabilities to see if there's something going on with their brain that's maybe different that we could help support.
Well, it just helps me to kind of correlate the numbers.
Yeah. When you look at the STAR report, you have Benchmark is green, on-watch is blue, intervention is yellow, and urgent intervention is red. So that color coding of yellow and red helps signal.
So you guys sort of benchmark it as sort of to the left of center and to the right of center is sort of, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question for you, and I
Yeah.
actually wanted to ask Kirsten this as well. How many weeks is it for STAR testing in your building?
How many
Or
weeks does it take
yes,
to?
yeah.
The STAR test, most of my teachers give it in like a one class period setting. So we have a 90-minute reading block, and the STAR test takes about 30 minutes. So in a rotation or with small groups, however they're managing, they may give it in one sitting, or they may say, you know, this group, you're going to take your STAR test, and then you're going to pause and rotate and come back to it tomorrow when you finish, when you go back to that group.
Okay.
So it doesn't take, of course, we have, our struggle is we're so large, we struggle with getting enough devices.
Right.
So we have about 10 Chromebook labs right now, but when you're doing it in the small group setting, you can share devices with others. And so we're, with the 2-week window, we can comfortably, that's the window that we set on the calendar days as a district that we like to see all of our students take the test. We can comfortably get it done in that time.
So, and you might not know this, I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, and if you don't know it, it's okay. You can
Okay.
maybe get back to me, okay?
Okay.
How many hours do you think is taken from instructional time when you do STAR testing? And I'm just trying to get an idea of how many instruction hours are not being taught to our students.
I have no idea. Jennifer might be able to speak to that more.
Okay, great.
It's about a 30-minute test. We do it 6 times.
Okay.
So for each, so 180 minutes for reading tests and 180 minutes for math tests for this year, for 6 sessions. So you have to figure about 30 minutes per reading test and about 30 per math.
So 180 for reading and 180 for math.
Yeah, if you test 6 times,
Okay.
which
Equivalent
most
to K.
teachers did this year.
The equivalent with K, basically.
Right, yeah, over the year.
Okay. Okay. Great, thank you for that.
I just wanted to say thanks for including strategic vision. That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Principal Roach, thank you very much.
Okay, next up is a status and update on arbitration. Lisa Friley, School District Attorney. Good evening.
Did you not get my requirement for your conditioning? I'm sure it's got to be in my retainer agreement somewhere. This is the time of year that we have the debate in my household over the thermostat. My husband loves this weather, and I hate this weather. So,
Lisa, could you speak up a little bit so people are saying they can't hear you?
okay. Boy, that's an unusual experience. Most people say, could you just stop talking? Okay, so my goal here is, and we've got a couple different conversations we're going to have today, tonight, so this will be kind of a limited update that will kind of prep us for the conversation we'll have at the end of the meeting tonight. Originally, as you have been aware, we have been working our way through some grievances and through an arbitration process. And the arbitration was originally set to be heard last fall. And through no fault of the district, there were some unexpected issues that came up that required us to postpone and reschedule that hearing, which we did. And the first part of that hearing took place in February of this winter. It's still winter at that point. And within that, you had seen these grievances, but I just want to refresh your recollection. The grievances that went to arbitration included allegations as to Article 3, the grievance procedure, which focuses on some language where actions are taken by administration that interfere with an employee's participation in a grievance process. Was some allegations regarding Article 8 in the Academic Freedom Clause, 9, the Teacher Evaluation Clause, 10, which is the discipline, shows up in your contract with the title of just cause on it. 11, complaint procedure, 16, paid leaves. It included some references to board policy, GBM and GBMAR, and several TSPC regulations were cited in the grievances that you guys ultimately saw and issued a decision on.
But we only issued a decision on
The
board
ones that were
policy.
contractual.
Oh, contractual.
Right,
okay.
yes.
So there was a lot in there, but we didn't have jurisdiction over that, just the
Well, you
small
would have had
ones.
jurisdiction over all of it. The policy one, according to the procedure, should have stopped at the board level, and there was a very complicated process. So all of those documents still went to an arbitrator, right? So an arbitrator saw all of the grievance documents. So all of those were claims that were submitted and we made arguments over the arbitrability, whether or not an arbitrator could hear some of those complaints or not. Because some of them we, as a district, would have and did make arguments that there wasn't any authority to hear, say, a policy grievance in arbitration, because that would have issued solely from the board with the final decision. But I'm trying to just kind of outline the ones that were raised along the way.
Is this,
Now,
I'm sorry, really quick, and you're talking about just the one that we have here or both?
the only difference, Shelley, between the two
Okay.
would be the reference to the evaluation article. Otherwise, they were identical
That's what I
between
mean.
both.
Okay.
Now, in preparing for arbitration, it's similar to any other form of litigation that you have been through, and I don't know, hopefully some of you have been lucky enough you haven't had to go through litigation, whether it's in a court or an arbitration. There is a discovery process that takes place and allows for the parties to exchange documents, and that all happens well after in this particular case, it happened well after the grievances were heard by the board. So most of the discovery requests came and were fulfilled in December of 2018, February of 2019, and then April there was a third request that came from the association. So we responded to 3 different discovery requests throughout this process. And in addition to that, and I think I have heard that there's been some conversation about this in the local community. There was an unfair labor practice filed in late 2018 by the association. It would have been late November, December, which has been in abeyance pending the outcome of the arbitrations, because there was, the district raised concerns that there was an overlap between some of the complaints, some of the allegations that were raised, that they were similar allegations in the grievance to what was raised in the unfair labor practice complaint. And so you want to get to a situation where you have one uniform decision, right? You would not necessarily want an arbitrator ruling one way on one case and a labor board ruling a different way on a different case. So those have been pending in abeyance, the outcome of this process, the arbitrations that we've been going through. As the discovery continued, administration became aware of information and documents that we did not have when it initially responded to the grievances. Okay, it's important to know, and timing is important in this particular case to understanding the ultimate decisions and recommendations that I made both to administration and that you will hear about later tonight in executive session, okay? Because at the time that the administration presented, when Superintendent Bellondo and Superintendent Stevens presented the administration's case in response to the grievances involving Mr. Hindstone and Mr. Woodside, and I use their names because it in fact has been very public, and it's better than saying grievant A and grievant B because we all know who we're talking about. The information that ultimately led, involving them, the information that we received and that we gleaned from this discovery process ultimately led to my recommendation to resolve the outstanding grievances and the complaints based on the information that we were unaware of at the time that the board heard the issue in, would have been August? I think it would have been August sometime that you guys heard the complaint, the grievances. What ultimately led to the resolution of the grievance were concerns that were a couple of specific acts that came to light during the discovery. And while administrators, and we're not talking about administrators at the central office, it was not your superintendent or your assistant superintendent, but there were a lot of other administrators who came into this conversation as discovery continued, because it became clear that there were some other parties that were involved in part of the actions and touching the facts of this case. And while their actions were completely unintentional, and they ended up having an impact on the case that we ended up presenting. And we ended up presenting multiple days' worth of hearings to an arbitrator. And while we even had some witnesses, I'll talk about that in a minute, but it is very likely that if we had continued forward based on the information that resolved that we found in the discovery process, that the arbitrator that was hearing the initial grievance, which was the larger one, Shelley, that you were thinking of, okay, and the Employment Relations Board could have and would likely have ruled against the district based on the information that was discovered through our discovery process. And late last week...
I'm sorry, so let me just clarify that. So are you talking about the settlement right now?
No, I'm not talking about the specifics of the settlement. I'm talking to you, I think it's important that you understand, and it would not necessarily... I think you need to understand the process we went through, which will help you ultimately understand the document that you will look at later, which is the settlement document. I am not talking about the terms of the settlement because we have some...
You're just talking about the process.
Right.
Okay, thank you. That's the clarification
and I
I
do
needed.
think it's important that you understand how we got to where we got.
Right, and I'm just trying to make sure I have my words right. Okay,
Sure.
thank you.
Okay. In addition to that, late last week, we received a copy of the third pending arbitration. And we received the arbitrator's decision. And when I read it, it pretty much confirmed, it supported the position I had taken in terms of my recommendation to resolve this outstanding grievance. Because in that particular arbitration, it related to some decisions we made relating to an evaluation. And we had an individual who was basically a staff member, a consultant for the program, the company that we used to buy and train all of our administrators, from the Charlotte Danielson program. We sent all documents to her in preparation for the hearing and had her review them because we wanted an expert's opinion as to whether or not the evaluation was completed properly and appropriately and all those things. And based on her review of it, she was confident that it had been done properly, right? But the beauty of arbitrations is that two people can look at the same exact thing and have completely different perspectives, right? And as I said earlier, while I think that some of the conduct and the actions of our administrators were very unintentional, I think it was very hard for the arbitrator to not believe that there was inherently bias that was built into some of those decisions. So ultimately, what the finding was in that final arbitration was that we had taken some action that reflected some bias within the evaluation that was conducted that was subject to this arbitration. okay? There was no finding that we violated the discipline procedure, the complaint procedure, the evaluation procedure, or any of those other clauses, but there was a finding that we in fact took action that, and he just was not able to come to a finding that there wasn't some sort of bias that came into play. That was his third-party decision, and it is one that we will abide by and we will comply with. But I think that that kind of gives you a perspective of, as I explained to you, this discovery process led you to believe that there were some other things that we found, some other actions that were taken, and while unintentional, a third party could clearly look at those and say that they were intentionally taken to impact negatively somebody who took the time to participate in a grievance process and was negatively because of that, right? And so that is kind of where we're at with all of these. We have basically, we'll talk about the resolution for the other pending litigation that we have right now to bring close to that. But by the time we're done here, you will have basically seen and heard, there was the one that was withdrawn and still stands. There was the one that the arbitrator issued a decision on, and then there was the one that we resolved. And if we're able to finally resolve all of them, it will end up with a withdrawal of all of the unfair labor practice and the remaining arbitration.
Could you repeat that?
Repeat what?
The last sentence. It will ultimately end up.
When we're done, once I have reported out to the board in executive session, then we will have resolved the outstanding labor issues with the Silver Falls Education Association.
So they're currently not resolved?
Well,
And therefore,
we have a settlement agreement. We're ready to disclose that. We're ready to communicate out to employees, but you are the ultimate, you need to see this, and the union was willing to work with us and accommodate the fact that we needed to report it back to you as a school board, which I will do when we get to that executive session.
and does that count as current litigation or litigation likely to be filed?
Well, there's still, the unfair labor practice is still showing up on the, it was showing as of Friday. So we're still trying to get all of the I's dotted and the T's crossed. But yes, I would believe that as long as you guys do not overturn, once I report to you what the settlement is, as long as you do not overturn the administration's decision, it will be resolved.
And we're okay to do that in executive session?
Yes.
You're our legal
Yes.
counsel on that?
Yes, I have handled those issues for you. Any other questions?
I just need some clarification, just so I interpreted it correctly. So the arbitrator, Mr. Miller,
Yes.
he found no violation of specific.
Of Article 9,
Okay.
Article 10, Article 11.
Out of how many articles?
There were 4 specific contractual articles, 1 policy, and several TSPC regulations in the documents that were submitted to him. The only one, there was 1, 2, 3, 4 contract articles submitted, a policy and TSPC, and he found on 1.
He found violation on 1?
Yes.
Okay. So he didn't find violation on 9, 10, or 11.
No.
What did he find violation on?
3G, which is the grievance process, and it spoke to whether or not the administrator's decisions were impacted by bias
Okay. So
in
that's
the,
what
for the participation in the grievance process.
Okay. And does that include the administration who are listed in this? All of them, or?
What do you mean?
I guess
No, he did not, he didn't.
Read this,
Yeah,
so
he
I
did,
just
he
got
did
this.
not find that there was any bias in the decisions of, say, the superintendent, the assistant superintendent. When you read it, it will be clear that the bias is being attributed to immediate administration,
And now this.
supervisors.
This is a public document now?
It is a public document, yes.
I've got a clarifying question as well. The original, I guess, complaint mentioned the word retaliation a lot. You've mentioned the word bias a lot. Are those the same word in your?
Yeah,
mind, or are those different?
he uses the word bias in his decision, so that's the term I have used in my explanation. But I think you could use reprisal. I think you could use retaliation. Any of those words could be interchangeable in this conversation.
Thank you.
Right.
Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
When you read the decision, be careful, really truly read it carefully. Go to a quiet place, because when I read it, it's very hard to sometimes track whether he's talking about the district's position, the association's position, or his.
okay.
Right? So just read carefully, okay?
So I think that was another question. When I tried to read it, there were so many references to, they had union in there, they had association, then they had,
Yeah.
So the vocabulary words in here are a little bit I don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't
it's ju-
neither the association or I have any control over
Okay.
how the arbitrator writes it. I always wish that arbitrators were as clear and concise as I want them to be, right? I actually don't like to lose cases, right? None of us do. But I don't mind losing when I can read something and I can understand it, and I can take from it opportunities for us to improve and do things differently and make things better. This is a little harder to read because it wasn't quite as organized as I would like it to have been, Shelley,
Okay.
but I don't have any.
That's okay.
I don't have any control over that.
That's totally fine. I just want to make sure that I ask my questions. That,
Yeah,
you know,
I'm going
you
to sit here
all
and just
hear.
let you kind of process
So-
for a minute so
That would
that
be great.
we can be sure that
Don't
we
leave
get
quite
all,
yet.
we get all your questions.
Just got this.
So Lisa, I
and-
appreciate your approach. And do you have takeaways for us for those improvements?
Yeah, I have already talked with the administration. One of the things that we are going to definitely look at doing is just some training, right? Because like I said, I don't think, I spent a lot of time working with your administrators on this, your building level and your what I would call frontline supervisors in this particular area. I don't think any of them intentionally, that they intended to say, because you filed a grievance, I intend to take a penalty against you for that, right? And we can obviously agree to disagree. And I would bet if I had Evan Wickersham in this room, he and I would probably disagree, right? But the point is, that doesn't mean that we can't do a better job at helping them to understand what is the appropriate role and responsibility for supervisors, what is the appropriate role and responsibility for association and representatives, and how that process works to make it work better for everybody, right? So that if an employee gets into a situation that they need representation, they will have access to it, it will work more smoothly, and that the parties will be able to engage in a legitimate problem-solving process and hopefully resolve things far short of where we ended up over a couple of these situations, right? So the real takeaway from my part is helping people to understand, while they may not have intended what happened, This is how the law looks at it. And by the way, in some cases, intention really doesn't count, right? The arbitrator doesn't really care what your intention is. You could have had the best of intentions. In some cases, you know, when you talk to folks, they'll say, but it seems like a clear conflict of interest, right? But that is ultimately not our issue. That is not for us as managers or supervisors to decide. And once we can explain that to some of our supervisors, it will be easier for them to at least understand where the boundaries are.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So in response to that, a third party, a non-biased arbitrator, read and heard evidence, I'm assuming, and decided that this is what Mr. Miller decided, this is what he saw, and this is
Yep.
what he interpreted.
Yep.
So his decision is really the final decision.
Absolutely is, Shelley. It is the final decision. It's not, it is the, I can tell you that we worked with someone who has no, you know, when we contacted the Charlotte Danielson organization and spoke to a consultant, those are not people who have any vested interest in telling me anything I want to hear, right? They're going to just tell me whatever they think is appropriate. And I can tell you, I could put her in this room and she would tell you a completely different outcome of it in terms of her interpretation based on the documents she reviewed and the other piece. But you are spot on in the sense that you could put 2 people, 3 people in the room, and they could all come to different decisions. But in this case, we have blessed Mr. Miller with the authority to make this decision, and he is the one that gets to make it, and we are going to move forward and make it work, and we're going to implement it. Absolutely.
One more quick question, I think it's quick. The net effect of this, if I read to the end of the summary, is that we're vacating the evaluations? Is that sort of the net effect, aside from the finding itself?
In essence, it's going to be like it never happened. It didn't occur.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, where's the?
If you go to the very last page and a half, it's okay. The remedy that he has basically ordered in this case was to basically just treat 2017-18 as it didn't happen. It will be removed and it just won't be there.
Okay. So it basically says the remedies, oh, here it is, the remedy sought by the union, however, would only pass, okay, wait.
The association was proposing a different remedy.
Oh, I see, okay, I didn't.
They wanted to basically make edits to the evaluation. Okay? And he basically said, yeah, I don't think that's a good idea. And since you guys have put me in charge, the solution's going to be we're going to remove it. And that's what we're doing.
So basically this document.
The arbitration exists. No, Shelley,
Okay.
the arbitration exists.
Okay.
The evaluation will not.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Other questions?
I'm good. I mean, yeah. I'm good. Yeah.
If you ultimately have additional questions, I would say feel free to drop me an email. I would just ask that you copy Tom on it so that, you know, I try very hard to make sure that I keep everybody in the loop and so that there's not a lot of individual, because a board operates as a whole, right?
So I'm going to ask one last question.
Sure.
I understand what you're saying with unintentional unintentional behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Or actions, that's what you said. But the arbitrator confirmed that they did happen. Is that right?
Oh, I don't think we ever, by the way, I'm not.
I'm trying to dissect this out and figure
I appreciate that. Let's be clear. There were very little facts that were in dispute.
Okay.
Okay? It is what the intention of those facts were, right? It is what, it was the why they happened, not the if they happened, right? It was the why that became subject to, we had a different answer to the why than the association had to the why. Okay? So none of us, when it was very clearly, even though we had a significant amount of testimony, most of that testimony was not driven by establishing factually what happened. Who met with who on what date. That was pretty clear. It was the why those things happened that became more important. And those are about trying to understand what people are thinking and feeling and how that impacts the decisions they make by, in this case, a score they select on an evaluation or a comment that they make, right? It was the why did we say that and why did we pick that number versus a different number. Not that, that the facts didn't happen. The facts happened. I don't think any of us disputed that there were meetings, there were conversations, there were things that were said, there were actions that were taken. It was the why those actions were taken that became the subject of this litigation. Hopefully that helps explain that a little bit.
So where do we go from here with this? What happens next?
Very good question. Well, I think that there's a couple of things. Number one, there'll be some that you will see as we finalize, as we wrap up the settlement agreement. So we'll share some of those details with you when we get there. But the other part of this, I think I've already talked about some of the training components. I think we will implement the arbitrators award. We will finalize any last administrative paperwork, make sure that all things have been closed, withdrawn, signed, sealed. There will be some communication that will be going out to employees tomorrow morning as we wrap this all up. So, and it's all basically in an effort to try and hit a restart button and move forward in building positive relationships.
Is there any threat of a lawsuit from the grievant
I don't
in the future?
know what it would
I
be.
don't know what this says, so I don't know if that's in the decision. I don't know, I'm just.
Yeah, I don't know what it would be,
Okay.
Shelley, if there was. There are certain procedures that if you're going to file a lawsuit, and they were all represented by counsel, so, and not just building representatives or even UNISERV. They actually had an attorney working with them as of last year. And there are specific steps that you have to take if you want to sue a public entity, not the least of which is providing a tort claim notice within 180 days of the alleged injury, and that has not happened. So, and there are exceptions to every rule, but I can't think of one that would apply in this particular instance. So, no, I don't think there will be any further, once we can complete the current litigation, I don't think there will be any further litigation on this issue involving these employees. And by the way, these individuals, because I don't think they're employed here right now. So.
I have a question about something else.
Mhm.
You emailed us today.
I did. I sent you all an email.
Yes, and it provided some initial answers regarding a contract that we're considering.
Yep.
And you said that you could answer more.
I know. I hate it when I do those things.
Yes.
I will do the best I can.
Is that something that
Yes.
we do in open session or we do in executive session?
If you are asking for my legal advice, I would tell you that you should probably do that in consultation. You should be able to have the same privilege that any other client would have to receive legal advice. If, on the other hand, you are asking just a basic question about process or, and I don't know what your question is, so I can't really help you answer that question. But I don't think there was anything in the answers that I sent, except maybe the last one as it related to the overall contract.
It was.
That would be legal advice. I think I was giving you facts in most of the other ones.
Yes, and I didn't
so, yeah.
understand your answer to number 1. Though I didn't
Okay.
understand your first sentence to.
Oh, did I? Maybe I
The
didn't
rest
type.
of it made sense.
Maybe I didn't do a good, and we don't have internet here, do we? Let me grab my phone. Because I would have a copy in my sent items.
Oh, yes.
I have a couple more questions for you after this. Just popped in my head.
It may take a second, Jennifer, is it?
I can read it to you.
Why don't you?
Okay. It says, does the proposal as you have outlined have any financial impact on the district this year or in future years beyond the obvious, such as the salary increase?
Okay, so the answer to that should have read something to the effect of, if an employee retires and comes back to work for you, right now, for a period of 6 months between July and December, there would be no additional, there would be an additional cost under the proposed contract, because the proposed contract is proposing that those funds be put into a benefit. Right? Does that make sense so far?
So there's an additional cost
But there
compared
would,
to what it would have been.
if a person retired, I mean, it's important that you keep, I mean, I gave you 3 different scenarios. Employee still works for you, doesn't retire, then the cost is the same, right? Because you're making the contributions into PERS rather than putting them into a benefit as proposed by the superintendent. If the superintendent retires and there currently is, for that 6-month window, no obligation to pay the PERS costs, and therefore that would be a savings to the district, but for the proposal to modify the benefits in the benefit portion of the contract, which uses those funds to create the TSA, right? Which means that, in effect, if you retired and you saved it, you aren't saving that money for 6 months. Now, in January, the law will change, and you will have to make those PERS contributions even for retired employees. So at that point, it would be no cost. It would be cost neutral to the district. Does that help?
Yes, that does help. So after the January, it would be cost neutral between July and December. We would incur an additional cost, but it wouldn't be different than what we're already
paying,
extending. So
right.
what language do we, I mean, I see the difference between those two. I don't know how
Right.
to talk about
Which
that.
is why I tried to separate them out. If the superintendent decided not to retire and continued to work, you would have to make those contributions and you would make those payments.
And then Lisa, this is all predicated on the governor signing the bill.
Yeah, but I don't think there's any doubt the
So
governor
there's
will
no
sign the
doubt that's
bill.
gonna happen.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I actually I have a number of my professional colleagues that work on the other side of the that are union representatives that I've worked with for many years, that I have just professional relationships with, and they obviously are not very happy with this proposed legislation. Not happy at all, by the way, and I don't blame them. Right? You elected a bunch of people who you thought kind of marched with your beat, and they have abandoned you in late term session, and they're taking another shot at your pension. So I get it. But there is absolutely no doubt that something is going to and by the way, what we don't know yet, we know at least what the governor is going to sign, which is the bill that they finally managed to get a 29-31 vote count on out of the house, which is not a big, when you own 2/3 of the house, to only get it by 2 votes tells you how close this was. So the governor will, I think, will definitely sign it. The next question that we have to confront is, what will the PERS board do, right? Will the PERS board actually implement some additional cost savings mechanisms at their upcoming meeting, and will there be any other changes? What will they do? And we don't know what that is and won't know that until they meet. I think they meet this month, maybe July. It's soon.
That was my question, is when are they meeting?
Yeah, they meet soon.
Okay.
Yeah, because this is about the time they meet to set the rates for not the current cycle, but for the next 2-year cycle out. It's always out a ways when they set rates for employers.
And maybe you can help me understand something a little bit further. Currently, teachers retire and they draw PERS while continuing to work for districts. That happens, teachers or administrators. And they can ask for alternate compensation that would have been equal to the budgeted amounts for their positions. Does that happen very often?
Yeah, I think in my, I tried to express in my answer to you that I haven't seen anything similar to what, in other words, I haven't seen anything similar to what is being proposed in this particular contract, but I think that's because more often than not, in the collective bargaining agreements for both, and it's mostly for licensed, not so much for classified, because of the margin of cost difference is it's a smaller margin when you're talking about classified staff versus teaching staff, from where a starting salary is to a retired employee salary. There's a bigger gap for teachers than there is for classified. But because of that, the employees were successful in the late 80s, early 90s in bargaining what I would call early retirement provisions that included contributions toward insurance and or retirement stipends that would be paid for a certain number of years based on a certain number of years of service with the school district. So a good example would be that if you had worked for a school district for 15 years and you were retiring and you were PERS eligible, some of those programs would have paid a stipend of anywhere from $300 to $500 per month, and there may or may not have been some insurance that went with it, right? Now, in many cases, when our funding, after Measure 5 and some of the other things, when our funding started to decline, we tried to start sunsetting some of those provisions. But we still, in some districts where they exist, we still have staff that qualify in some cases because they've been with the district that long, that they still would have been employed at the time that benefit existed, and they may just be the last few stragglers that are going out. So, Jennifer, I guess what I'm trying to say is it just looked different for teachers, right? It didn't look necessarily like a one-off. Some of the other ones that I experienced were when we had significant budget shortfalls and we were looking for retirements. Boards would then make an offer of a retirement package to some senior staff to be able to clear out some of those higher salaries and reduce so that employees wouldn't have to be laid off. That would be another time that I've seen payments go to teachers and or classified staff.
So the person who retired agreed to accept a lower compensation?
No, what they would do is we'd say, hey, all of you are eligible for retirement. You may want to continue to work, but we would love it if you would retire. And in order to encourage you, we're going to offer you 5 years of insurance or $500 a month.
But not rehire.
No, probably not.
That's, I was
Probably
thinking
not.
about rehiring, okay.
Yeah.
Can you explain something to me?
I'll try.
Okay, that'd be great. I'm just going to read you something.
Are we going back to the arbitration?
Yeah, we are, because I didn't know we
Can
were
I
done.
pull the decision out? You tell me where it is?
Yeah, it's on the very last page, and I think it's the decision from Mr. Miller, and I just want to make sure that I understand.
Okay.
While I have you here.
Uh-huh.
It's the last it starts with the union. The last page. Right here. The paragraph that starts, "The union has met."
Uh-huh.
Okay. The union has met its burden of proof by a preponderance of the evidence establishing that the school district is guilty of violating Article 3G.
Right, which is what I told you they
Right,
violated.
okay. Of the contract by engaging in a pattern of retaliation and reprisal, which means, Jonathan asked you about that word.
Ye-
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Against the grievant for filing and processing grievances, which was negatively reflected to some extent in his evaluation. His evaluation, is this just one grievant? Or
Yes.
is it- Okay, thank you. The remedy sought by the union, however, would only fester the wounds that exist between the parties as exhibited during the hearing. What the parties truly need is this case is closure.
Yeah, he didn't type
So-
the word right, but that's
Closer.
the, that's
Closer.
what I
know,
think he
I
intended.
said closure because I knew that was wrong.
I know.
Okay, so since the grievant is no longer employed by the school district, a better remedy, and one that results in complete and absolute closure, is removing the evaluation from the grievance personnel file, which was another of remedies sought by the association in the grievance, which was another, okay. Thus, the grievance personnel file shall indicate that no evaluation was completed, and the school district on his behalf for the 2017-18 school year. So what, I know that you have mentioned that we're, there's a thought process of retraining and things like that, but what is the accountability
Oh,
in this?
I-
what-
yeah,
what-
Shelley,
I'm trying to look at both.
Yes,
And-
and I don't mean to cut you off, but I
Okay.
really don't want to talk specifics about specific employees, right? Because we may or may not be having conversations because you're asking me what the consequences are for employees who may or may not have done something, say an administrator or two who may or may not have done something. And I don't think that.
District accountability,
I think the district accountability
That's-
will become clear when we talk later this evening.
okay. Well, maybe that's it then.
I think the district accountability will become clear. The district has clearly accepted responsibility for its actions.
Okay. Maybe that's what
Yep.
not personal, but district, because we're talking about district. Okay.
Right. Yes.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? I really do want you to, I don't get to see you very often, and it's hard to ask me questions sometimes.
Yeah, it's
so.
probably a good thing, right?
Yeah, I guess you guys get excited about it. Your attorney doesn't show up and it's all good news. When the attorney shows up, take a deep breath, right?
I guess I could ask you more about the question 3 on the email.
Sure.
Do other districts offer this to superintendents currently? I don't remember who asked that question. That was one of us, I think, did. You said yes.
I think it might have actually been Jonathan.
Jonathan, yes. So, good question, Jonathan. What does that look like? Can you give us more details about what that looks like or options that you've seen before?
Yeah. A lot of it is highly dependent upon your location. Because I think I also put in that email that there are some parts of the state that people retire and superintendents retire, and they go and they work there full time. And PERS right now currently allows them to do that because of just the difficulty in recruitment and retention of superintendents. Now, in most cases, those are more rural areas than you consider yourself to be, although I'm sure you consider yourself to be a little more rural than, say, Salem or Portland or Eugene is. But you also see it in other communities, right? Communities that exist within what I would call the Valley Corridor. And that can be, a lot of times, that will be, because even under the current rules, a superintendent can retire and they're limited to the 1039. That will be the magic number that shows up when we start talking about rehiring in some of the major metropolitan areas. Because that's the limitation that PERS puts on workers when, say, receiving a pension, except for those that are are fully retirement eligible, which means Social Security eligibility. So you can actually reach a point that even if you work in Portland, Salem, or Eugene, you could work a full, 2040 or whatever, 2080, whatever it is. So what some superintendents do is they basically retire and then just work full-time for a year, right? So your first 1039 is July through December, and your second 1039 is January through December. And that gives a transitional period in some cases. There are others that the decision has been made that they can work half-time, and so there's a half-time, and so they're able to work and continue to work regularly. I've seen that system as well. I don't know that that works as well for you, given your size and
Well, we don't have the limitation anymore, so I mean.
yeah, and the limitation will actually go away in January. And part of what the purpose of eliminating it is to really study whether or not it has a negative, I mean, PERS is going to use that period of time to study whether or not it actually has an impact on rates and retirements, and whether if that impact is negative or positive, right? So they're going to be using it to try and look. They use the word efficacy. They're going to be looking at the efficacy of this program to try and determine its whether or not it should continue past the down by the 2024. I mean, part of the problem is that every time we do one of these reforms, we end up with a fairly large exodus out of our workforce. And in some cases, that's not a good thing. We're losing some really good experienced staff. They're in hard-to-fill positions, and you really want to maintain, the person still wants to work and has the energy and the success in doing so, and we're basically pushing people out the door because they have no choice. So, this will be something that will hopefully allow us to retain some staff that would otherwise retire.
And in past reform cycles, have people chosen to retire because that's what's best in their individual interest in regards to PERS?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, one of the things that's going to happen is in January, I think it's January, for people who are Tier 1, 2.5% of their 6% is going to come out of their account, and it's going to go to PERS. That affects your IAP, right? That individual account that is supposed to then balance off your change, because for folks after the reform in 93, 92, 93, I think it was 93, because it's always an even year. That basically eliminated money match, which is a method of calculation for anyone who was, when I was working for a PERS employer, I started in 90, and I was putting money into a variable account, right? And that option basically went away for me. So even though I'm in the system, money match for me is not a conversation, right? It just isn't. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? It's just a change. And this IAP was supposed to help compensate somewhat for that. And I'm not going to get into the merits of whether it was or it wasn't, but that's what it was structured to do. And so now employees are going to see another portion of that 2.5%. And so employees are going to have to figure out, am I going to continue to work while they take that 2.5% and just be happy that I'm still getting 3.5%, because 3.5% is not something to get, it's not a stick in the eye either. It's not so bad. But that will be one of the decisions they have to make. But yeah, I think we could see another group of folks to go. And if PERS makes any adjustments to the formulas on the calculation, like the annuity rates or the longevity tables, I think that too could impact people in terms
So
of whether they stay or go.
The retirement decision after a reform cycle is often to protect your PERS that you've already accrued.
Earned.
And moving forward, it's not such a great, PERS isn't as good of a deal as it had been in the past.
I think most people would tell you that Tier 3 isn't as exciting as Tier 2. Anyone in the room here agree with me? I think that's a pretty, people don't always say I speak for the people, but on this one. So, I think that's each time you're ratcheting down. I mean, I could give you my theory. I mean, this is not about tier 3 people. I mean, whether I agree or disagree with the union about many things, I do think that the people who are paying the cost for this are not the people who are actually getting the benefit, right?
Right.
So,
I'm paying the cost.
right.
So have you anywhere in there explained, and I'm just going to throw this out there because I've been reading it everywhere.
Okay.
Double dipping.
Oh, it's it is a phrase, and
Okay, so because it doesn't matter where I read, even
Yeah.
it's everywhere, and I'm like, okay, what? I just need to get facts.
right.
don't
And
need
I have to
any
tell you,
other
I mean, there's
language.
I could give you an argument that double dipping's bad, and I could give you an argument that double
Right.
dipping's
It can
good,
be
right?
debatable, but
So
can you
I
give me
kind
the
of,
facts?
I don't think.
It would be nice.
I don't think we should label things like that.
Okay.
When people talk about double dipping, they are talking about people who are continuing to receive a paycheck and their pension
Okay.
contribution at the same time. But I think it's a bit of a fallacy to some degree, because employees can actually work for their employer and collect their Social Security, right? It all depends on if they're continuing to work at an age
Right.
when they could have collected Social Security. So I'm not sure what the difference is between one
Right.
and the other, because the employer is still making contributions, to both of them, right? Statutory contributions. So what you really should be looking at, in my opinion,
Okay.
is what the cost impact of this is to your district, right? One of the factors is cost. You also need to look at, as you look at things on a case-by-case basis, you're looking at staffing, just like the administration looks at, does the district benefit in a positive way from the continuation of this employee's service, right? And as long as it's something that when you look at what it's going to cost you, you're willing to write that check, and you think there's value for the service of that employee, then that to me seems like a win-win all the way around. If it doesn't, then maybe it's not a good fit. Did that help, Shelley?
It does, but
I don't use those terms.
It was it didn't make any sense when I was
But it is a term
reading
that's used. Right.
But I'm like, why do people keep using this? And it wasn't, in my research, it wasn't making sense.
Yeah. It's basically a collection of,
right.
yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I
It's
wanted to ask
working,
the
and a
lawyer.
person's still working. I mean, and a person, if they're working and giving you your time, they should be compensated for it.
Right.
They shouldn't be showing up every day from 8 to 5 or 7 to 4 or 7 to whatever it is. And the only thing they're getting is the pension they worked for, right? That is no longer growing because, they're not getting credit for the time that they work. I mean, it makes no sense to me whether we're talking about that for a teacher, a classified employee, or an administrator. It's just not a relevant term. I think you need to look at the costs of it.
Yeah, and those are in my questions too, but I was going to ask our chair, have we now delved into, we're now asking questions about all of this? Because I have several questions. So we were talking about the arbitration.
We've been going back and forth from topic to topic. Are we satisfied?
Are we going to manage
Let's
this?
finish. Let's do one before we start both.
Right.
Are we done with the arbitration questions? Okay.
So, yeah,
Carry
for tonight. For tonight,
For right
so
now.
far, for right now.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I have a clarifying question.
Okay.
I understood this portion to be discussing our questions with Lisa regarding upcoming action. Are we now going to switch to talking about said action items, or are we going to stick to the agenda as written? Because I'd like to, because there's a distinction, right? Once we
Right.
switch from asking Lisa questions, I have a number of things I want to say to you
Right.
and or the public, but
Me too.
I don't know that we're there yet.
Good question.
During the action item, after you have, there is a discussion period. So if you get a motion, we'll pause and we can talk till we're blue in the face. Does that make sense? Is that a good enough time to discuss?
Right, I think that would be sufficient. We can talk now or then. There's questions I have of you,
Yes.
and
Yes.
But I don't know if we're there yet, and I'm just looking to you, Tom, to
Yeah,
tell us where
yeah.
we are.
Mr. Chairman, if I can chime in, Robert's Rules of Order allows you to discuss topics before an action is on the floor. So you could surely talk about this topic during that action item.
Thanks, Andy. I mean, and Lisa's here to answer the question, so ask away. We're done with arbitration, so let's go. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're just skipping
So we're skipping
board
to-
reports?
Not skipping, moving this one
We're
up.
just moving the
We're
one
just-
item.
I'm not
So-
moving it, I'm just gonna add a discussion item.
Add a discussion item.
We're just gonna add a discussion item. Let's
Okay.
go ahead and discuss the contract.
Okay.
Is that what we wanna do?
I'm fine with it. I'm
Okay, I just wanna make
looking for
sure we're
direction.
starting the right thing.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Can I ask one
I
quick
think
question?
just, oh, is it process related?
No, it's regarding the pension. Are we good? Okay.
I think we're got the green light.
Sweet. So one of the questions I have is, if I understand correctly, starting January 1st, 2020, anyone that has retired, let's say now, and then continues with their employment, January 1st, that 6%, that typical 6% that would be allocated for the PERS pension, 2.5 is then reallocated. So the 2.5% that normally would be paid, or 6% that would normally be paid,
Right.
out of that 6%, Lisa, 2.5 is then reallocated to pay their current pension retirement.
That is a correct statement for Tier 1 and Tier 2. For Tier 3, it's 0.75, I believe.
So if the employee then
Should
wanted
have brought my
a
cheat sheet.
6%, they would then have to pull that out of their own income just to match to create the 6%.
Yeah, there is a provision in the pending the pending legislation that we anticipate the governor to sign that will allow an employee to make voluntary contributions into their IAP account. So if I'm one of those employees, I could make a 2.5% contribution into my IAP to get it back to its full 6. The one slight difference, and you got to leave it to a bunch of actuaries and everybody to do it this way, is that it cannot be pre-tax, because right now that contribution is going into my IAP if I'm that person that's going in pre-tax. And that the reason that's important is it affects the load, the payroll expense load that is on that dollar, because it comes out, it's an above-the-line deduction is what we call. So we basically calculate some very limited payroll taxes. The 6% comes out and goes. Then your salary is recalculated minus that 6%, and then we figure all the other payroll taxes. And if your business manager was here, he would be able to keep me straight on all this. But I believe that then the full load of payroll taxes, state, federal, unemployment, workers' comp, and everything is then added. That won't be able to happen. It'll have to be what we call a below-the-line deduction. So it will happen after all the tax liability and payroll liability, and then just like it would be for a non-qualifying retirement account.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah.
I have a question. I don't know, you might know this, I don't know, but anyway.
I'll tell you if I don't.
Okay, great. If we approve a contract for Mr. Belando, I don't know if you can do this, by law, he will no longer, well, by law, question mark, or anything else, will he no longer be our employee once?
No, he'll still be your employee.
He'll still be our employee?
If you accept his proposal,
Okay.
right?
Right.
He will still be your employee.
Oh, okay, because my next question was, if he wasn't, do we need to post this position, interview, and go through the hiring process? So no, okay.
He would still be your employee.
Okay.
And there's no amount of time in which he would not be our employee?
No, because they're seamless. They're one. I mean, right now you have an agreement in place.
Right.
Right.
We have a contract.
All you're doing is replacing one agreement with another agreement. There is no gap.
Oh, okay.
What about timing? So the current contract has it's for 3 years, and it has a date for notifying us, and that date has passed, and so we don't have, I mean, what is the significance of that date?
Well, and I don't know that I've seen that particular date, because I think in the draft I looked at that you sent me, Tom, that language had been replaced with something else. So usually those and I'm to some degree,
Talking in generalities. That's
yeah, I'm going to talk about what I normally see in superintendent contracts. Normally, that provision exists so that both parties have clearly notified each other of what their intention is early enough in the process so that both sides can make decisions, and nobody kind of get left without somebody sitting in a chair, right? And so, given that this would end up being mutual, if it were, then I don't think that it is troublesome in any way. The other part I would tell you is that a contract by its definition, Jennifer, can always be modified, right? As long as you have mutual agreement, as long as you're willing to give up, you know, the notification piece of April, and he's willing to give up the notification piece of April, you both have a happy solution, and you just modify the contract and you end up with what it is. It only becomes relevant if one side or the other is not willing to agree to a modification or a waiver of their rights under the contract. Does that make sense?
Then what happens?
Then you've got a 3-year contract in place with 2 years still on it.
So, I didn't have a chance to ask this person a question, but she made a public comment, and I wrote down some notes. And I'm wondering if you can help clarify. Ms. Shelslab, January. She said something to the effect of initiating a new contract. It voids past experience and starting new. I don't, because we're talking about voiding contract or changing contracts, it's just.
You're not voiding anything. You would just be negotiating a replacement of one contract for the other.
Okay.
And it's not a totally new contract, Shelley. There's just some, if you want to call it amendments to it, the way I understand it.
Okay.
Just some changes in certain sections.
Okay. Okay.
But it's a new contract.
But it's a new contract.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very
I
similar,
mean, it's-
very, very similar.
Right.
Yeah.
But it is.
And there's changed language.
What's the question? To clarify it, that I understand what you just said.
We heard just fine. Keep going, please. I mean, we can't interact with the audience. I'm sorry.
So Lisa, you
I
said.
mean, if you want to ask for it.
You said in analyzing this thing, the main issue that we should look at should be cost. And the way I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, the way that Andy's proposing is that we take what now is going to PERS from this July through December, and we put it in a TSA for him. So technically, that's not a new cost to the district, because we're already putting that into PERS. That could be a savings to the district, but if we would agree to that, there's no, I mean, we're losing that savings, but there's no additional cost to the contract.
Correct.
Okay.
Like, let's play this. One scenario is to leave the current contract in place. You're going to be making that 6% contribution, and it's going to go to PERS, and you're going to be making the payment. Let's then say another option would be to engage in a modification of the current agreement and work under the 1039 for the first 6 months, and then put that money into a TSA. You are not getting the savings you might have experienced from July to December, but it is not wholly different, as you were saying, Jennifer, as the cost you would have experienced if you had just left the contract in place and continued to pay your obligation under that contract. Right.
It's cost neutral, but we would not be realizing potential savings.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And by the way, when I say cost, I'm not telling you that I'm not predefining for you whether it needs to be cost savings, cost neutral, or cost you money, right?
Okay.
I'm just telling you
That's our
that,
decision.
right, that's ultimately your decision to make, but that ultimately that is an important factor for you to look at and come to some consensus as to where you all are on where that number goes, right? Because I don't have an opinion on whether it's neutral, cost, or savings.
There's kind of.
Just making sure.
Two topics here, as I see it, right? So there's one, which is a philosophical question. There's a new law. Do we want to set precedent? Do we want to support the idea of a retire, rehire practice, right? So I think there's sort of a philosophical question. I think then there's a very specific question with a specific contract proposal that Andy gave us, right? So if we were to move past the opposite of the philosophical opposition that I might have, for example, and get to the nitty gritty, I have some specific questions, and we might have some specific things that we need to discuss with the contract. On a philosophical level, I don't support the idea of retire, rehire generally. I think there's good cause for it sometimes. Case in point, rural districts where you can't find people. I think this is a destination district. I don't think we would have any trouble at all hiring anybody, probably. But then there's the question of sort of, cost, right? If it's beneficial to an employee to retire and continue working financially, by definition, it's detrimental to the state, right? It has to be. So there's sort of a philosophical opposition I have there.
Hey, can you say that one more time?
If it's beneficial to an employee to retire and then continue working, by definition, it's detrimental to the state of district.
Because of the cost, the PERS cost?
Because I think you're arguing that you're locking in that higher level benefit cost, right?
Right. I mean, the only way, it has to be, right? I mean, it just, math says it has to. Then if you look at it from the standpoint of, we have lots and lots of employees who are trying to get hired, grow their careers, and for every employee that retires and continues working, we've stagnated the career paths of hundreds and thousands of other employees. So I have some philosophical opposition to it. That's sort of separate from the contract. So I'm just sharing that with you guys, food for thought, if nothing else, right? Things to chew on, to mull over.
Can I respond to a couple of those?
Sure.
Are you done?
I have other thoughts, but feel free.
No, I was just going to counter the retire, rehire. That's not something new.
I didn't say it was. I said I'm
Well,
opposed to it.
that's not something, I know you said you're opposed to it, but the flip side of that is the district is saving money by not contributing to PERS, and we're keeping seasoned employees who have done a good job for us in the past. This happens with teachers a lot. And teachers who are eligible to retire, and why shouldn't they if they're eligible? But it's been very beneficial to the district to save those PERS costs, but to have that employee come back with that seasoned and institutional knowledge.
So
And that's the way I look at it with.
That
with
benefit
Andy.
that you're talking about, the saving of PERS costs, that goes away January 1, 2020.
Yeah, we
Just
have to
FYI.
keep contributing.
We have to.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay, so the point you're making, I'm pointing out, is no longer valid, essentially. So
Because there is
Well,
no
but
cost
the
savings.
point of having seasoned employees with the institutional knowledge does not go away.
Clearly, and I want to be clear, I actually don't want Andy to leave next year. Okay, I'm going to make that clear right now. I just assume he stayed. My opposition is to the retire, rehire practice. That's my opposition. So if he wants to continue working, God bless him, continue working. I just don't have, I'm saying I oppose it philosophically.
Yeah, and I get, Jonathan, I do kind of get that argument, and that's kind of an argument I still wrestle with, but I do know that's, in my mind, that's an argument and a dilemma that should be settled in Salem. And that way rules are set for all the districts, all public places of employment everywhere. So one district doesn't make a philosophical argument, but that also hurts their ability to retain good employees. So I don't want to, if I were to take a stand on that, I might hurt this district's ability to retain good employees. So I may, you know, whatever that rule is, I want the rule to be the same for the entire state. So I tend to agree with you, but this isn't the place to have it. I mean, so.
I'm gonna disagree that we couldn't have that.
Okay, well, good, yeah, we can, sure, fair enough.
You know, Tom, I want to make 2 points on this too, and I believe, Senate Bill 1049, this is just a small component of many facets of that bill. I think there's more to it than just the application that we're talking about tonight. And I think the intent of the bill was to start chipping away at that PERS gap. And granted, 2.5% doesn't sound like a huge amount, but at this point, every little bit helps. So starting January 2020, there is that 2.5%.
It's money. It's real money.
It's real. It's tangible. So at least that's something. It's more than philosophy. It's spendable, right? So we can consider that, throw that in the mix as well.
Right.
Does that make sense?
I'm not sure.
I do have a couple thoughts on the specific contract.
Well, I have a response to the philosophical.
Yeah, let's just stay
thought.
there, let's stay with that
Yeah.
letter, and then we'll go to the contract.
So I do see both sides. But I think there has to be a philosophical discussion, because what we're trying to do is it's just not about the numbers. It's also about what works specifically for our district and what the mold is for that. We have our highest paid employee who we got a contract 5 days ago, and with all of this new information, and we don't even know if it's all, I mean, it's lots of facets in process. I mean, so I get both sides. I get, you know, the money side, but I do believe we need to talk about the philosophical side and what kind of message we're sending to our community. And I think that it's important to discuss that philosophical thought. I have a page and a half of questions about money and philosophical things that I think we need to discuss. And as a board, we have to talk about all of it. It's important, not just the money. And it's important to do that. It's our responsibility to do that as board members and really dig in and see what that looks like. And I'm happy, I'd like to read what I have at some point, but
I just want to say I agree with, I have some issues too with the retiree hire. However, I'm trying to balance those with the individual employee rights.
Right.
And that's the piece where I'm at. It's like setting a precedent or an example or all of that is definitely in the back of my mind. It looks like, this is a very short window of time where this is all going to change starting in January. So it's like I don't know. I'm feeling unsettled, I guess, and I can see multiple sides.
Yeah. Can I just, because I want to make sure we're all factually on the same page. I believe you have, not you, I'm going to use the word you in the royal sense, okay? I believe the district has created a precedent long before you guys showed up. In other words, I believe you've had a prior superintendent who has done this and other prior administrators who have done this, based on just some historical data collection. So I don't think this would be the start of a precedent. Okay. And I think that's, I don't know if that makes a difference, but I think this happened probably, if I went back and looked at the years that were connected to it, I believe it would have probably happened right about the time the first reform probably came out.
Right. I was referring specifically to the working full-time in perpetuity, as opposed to, they were limited to the 1039 or whatever.
Yeah. Yes, but there also wasn't a change in the rule that will, like what will be happening in January. You might have had a different outcome if there had been a different rule in place, right? We don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
There used to be a financial advantage to do that, and they're taking that away. From how that's how I interpret it.
Right. So I just want to make sure that, I don't want it to seem like this is a unicorn that hasn't ever happened before. Right?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
And this is just a one-year contract.
Right.
It's, the way it's written,
Well,
it's,
Go ahead.
it's actually written, as I read it, such that it's renewable in perpetuity,
With agreement of both parties.
unless we show cause to remove the superintendent.
No,
Did I misread that?
no, I don't think that that's what I've read. Hang on, let me look at it. I know exactly where it is, thank you.
Wait.
I see what your language concern is, but I don't see how you can renew a contract without mutual agreement for a term that is only for 1 year. So
So 7 would not be,
I would tell you that the way to solve that problem is to just clarify the language as it's written to reflect the intent that it requires mutuality. A contract should always require mutuality.
thank you. And that would have, that was going to be one of my points to the specific contract that I thought needed clarity.
Right.
Lisa, what would be some language to amend that? Can you suggest something?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like right now while I'm sitting here?
Yeah?
I mean, there's a
In
difference
charge.
between like, now can I do it when I get back to my office on Tuesday morning?
Right
Or
now would be great.
She might want to do that offline, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know that this has to be.
I don't know.
But yes, it could easily be fixed for a similar notification piece to occur by February 1st. In other words, would have the option to, all you would literally have to probably do is say the superintendent shall have the option to propose a renewal of this contract under the conditions, da-da-da-da-da-da, by February 1.
So she'll have the option to propose it with board approval, it would be renewed. That's what you're saying.
Right,
So, there you go, with board approval, there you go.
right. Well, a proposal would have to be something that was accepted, right?
Okay. It just sounds like it's up to you, is the way it sounds.
Yeah, I could, I don't know why it was written the way it was.
Yeah, okay.
But I don't see how you would have the ability, because when you look at the term, when you look at all the other pieces, it very much reads like a one-year contract. I don't know how you get to a multi-year out of that without both parties agreeing to it. So I think it's just better to clarify and make
Yes.
sure it's clear.
Yes. And that's, I mean, if this was a long-term contract, I would, the consequences are greater if you enter into something that goes on. But if you get into this, if we were to approve it, and we get into it, and 6 months later, you discover for some reason, that's a pig in a poke, you're done. It isn't like, oh my God, we got 5 years of this left.
Right.
We have 1 year.
Which, by the way, you can't do a 5-year contract with a superintendent.
There you go. Okay.
You're limited to 3.
3, okay, fair enough, but you understand my point, so.
So this contract, the way it's written, is just for 1 year, correct? With the option of, didn't you just say that? To propose a renewal?
Yes. Because it talks about a term expiring on June 30th, 2020.
Right.
Okay.
I think as long as we clarify the renewal portion,
Okay.
which the way it was worded sort of made it seem like it was up to him, not us. But I
Yeah.
don't think that was the intent, but I think it needs to be clarified.
Okay, yeah, so I think the language.
Well, and I'm not sure that legally you could do it unilaterally with a
Yeah,
term
no,
that ends on
right,
June
it's just-
30th, right?
My point was
Right.
one of clarification.
Right.
Okay, thank
So
you.
can I-
Yeah. Go ahead, Julie.
Can I just read what I have? That would
Sure.
be great. Okay. So first, this is actually going fairly slow, but I had here, I'd like to slow this train down. We just received this new contract proposal 5 days ago. Several of us have many questions about this. Our district legal counsel just emailed us back today at 3:50 p.m. to answer some questions, but I do know there are many more out there, which we just confirmed right now. These are some reasons that I think that, and I'm talking to the board, my fellow board members, that we should think about this for just a little bit. I'd like to seek more legal counsel regarding the contract request Mr. Belando has made. I would like to speak to a PERS expert on this matter and see how this will affect our specific school district. Given that the public just voted in 2 new board members, it would be in the public's best interest to have the new board examine this, and we'll also be managing this. Is this in the best interest of the public? You answered one of my other questions, so I'm going to skip that one. Let's see. Is this a good morale booster to all the other employees in the district that our superintendent, the highest paid employee, is asking to do this? Do we need public input? And you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. The Jefferson School Board violated the law by not allowing public testimony before a vote.
That is not an accurate statement.
Okay, great. I read that online, and I wanted to make sure that that was accurate or not.
It was
Okay.
not.
So I
In
withdraw.
fact, we've requested a retraction
I
from the state's.
withdraw that statement. Thank you. Okay. Let's see. What is the cost to the district in staff time and legal and other costs of the 2 arbitrations? And how much will it cost us to implement the decision and settlement? We need to know all the details about the 2 grievances first. I don't want to put the cart before the horse. What's available to us from the Confederation of Oregon School Administrators for hiring an interim superintendent? It is my understanding they interview district boards and outgoing superintendents who might want to retire or have put forth information that they want to retire, and then find former superintendents to serve while a hiring process for a replacement is completed, which could be Mr. Belando. Andy proposes a full salary with step increase on top of his PERS. This is allowed, but that doesn't mean that we should encourage it generally or with reckless abandon. We should find out how much Andy will be making in retirement, then seriously consider offering as much as it takes to fill the gap between retirement pay and regular salary pay. That's how this can save us money and still have Andy serve until we hire a new replacement. I think an alternative we need to look at besides hiring an interim is to make sure the rehire of retired Belando can be ended at any time by the district with a buyout provision possibly, or when a replacement starts work, or which is earlier. That might be in the best interest of the district or for Mr. Belando. You never know. The board and the district has committed itself to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that means we need to have an open hiring process whenever possible. This situation, Andy's retirement or his request to retire, is no excuse to abandon our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Correct me if I'm wrong. Our policies, I think, call for open hiring. And what is being proposed is not an interim job, but rather a hire for a year, possibly to renew. And no mention of recruitment and replacement. So I'd like to find out more about that. Mr. Belando obviously wants to retire. He's expressed that, which is actually very exciting. We should let him do so. The community deserves an administrator who wants to be here for the long haul. In fact, that's why we sign 3-year contracts and keep extending them each year rather than letting them run away. I'd like to see the release of the grievance arbitration decision tonight, So I want to put everything on hold until we get that. Let's see. Anyway, I have noticed that the motion to approve retirement and approve employment are separate. I would be happy for us to go ahead and make a motion to approve retirement for Mr. Belando without any contingencies, because that is entirely Mr. Belando's own private decision to retire. And to insist on pushing approval of the new contract to July so that the process can be appropriately subject to public oversight, and because, like Director Traeger said, we just got this 5 days ago, and because not giving the board adequate notice.
I said that?
No, I mean, no, April 15th. That's what I meant to say. Oh, and I'm sorry, the date, April 15th. For proper and necessary consideration of all the financial and legal considerations. I think I've already said that part. It is incumbent on us as a board that we protect the right and correct function of the board. We are all held accountable to the public trust as a governing authority and probably protecting the district from legal challenges in the future. I'm not on one side or the other. I'm on the side of what is proper and appropriate and what I took an oath to uphold. So I think basically I'm just asking that we slow it down a little bit, continue to ask legal counsel questions, making sure that we are doing the right process, and that we are not jumping very quickly to make this happen. I want to make sure this is right for Mr. Belando, also right for the board, and also right for our district. So just a little more time I would like to request before we make a decision. So that's all. That's it.
Any more thoughts?
Who's going
Tim, you're
first?
taking a deep breath. You want to go?
I disagree with a ton of what Shelley said, but I'm not going to specifically say what on each point. But the state kind of messed this up for districts right now, deciding this so late. The state and the legislature, once again, kind of messed this up because they're leaving employees in a place where they could lose some substantial retirement if they don't make a decision quickly. And I think we also have to look at what we value in this district. Do we value employees who have been here a long time, who have dedicated most of their careers to this school district, as Andy has? Or do we say, thank you, c'est la vie, and we hope we can find somebody else? Because I just want to say, be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you wish for, because I'm sure we could find another superintendent, but is it somebody we want? And not just with Mr. Belando, but with a lot of, most of our seasoned employees. This might not be the first time we have to look at this. And do we want to keep people on who have been here for a long time, who know this district, who know the culture of this district, who have made this district successful and one of the best in the state? Or do we want to, save a few dollars and get people who we don't know who they are? They don't appreciate this district. They don't appreciate where we've come from and what this district does for kids. And so I think we really need to look. I'm on the side of the first part. I value our seasoned employees. I value the people who have been here. I think it's worth it to keep them around. We're talking one more year. I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it to keep them around. I think it's invaluable. It's invaluable rather than trying to bring in new people in. I think we really need to look at that aspect of it more and really appreciate what these people, what our people have done for this district, and the value that we have realized over and over in this district of people who stay here for so long. It's invaluable.
I don't disagree with that at all. I just
So
want
I
to
have no
slow down the process.
I have no problem with this contract. Mr. Belando obviously had to decide this because of some things, you know, the state, new laws the state kicked in. And it leaves him in a bad spot for that. I totally understand that. But I have no problem with doing this and keeping Andy on. There's no doubt in my mind.
Well, does it leave him in a bad spot? That's what I don't, that's what I want to avoid.
It leaves the district in a bad spot.
I'm asking her.
Okay, so a
does
couple of
this
things. I think it's,
Who leaves what in a bad spot?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to interrupt just for a second. Excuse me. I just need to know this is becoming extremely complex and much more difficult than what I'd anticipated. I'm choosing to withdraw my letter of retirement, and I'm choosing to withdraw the contractual proposal. This is not in the best interest of the board. We've spent over an hour discussing this matter. It feels like an hour discussing this matter. You're discussing about my personal fate. You're discussing about my professionalism. You're discussing my approach to the future. So I fully support this school district. I think it's in the best interest of me at this point to fully withdraw both of those proposals. That's my stance. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm hoping we can move on as a meeting and get the rest of this meeting completed.
Okay.
Yep. It's done.
I guess I don't need to answer your question at this point.
I guess not. I was hoping to give him what he wanted, but
So-
just needed
Thank
to
you,
know more
Andy. And there's a
information.
So we just
Yeah, absolutely.
We just gonna continue operating on your current contract?
Yeah, I mean, I can surely submit another contract that would be a proposal, just as we've done multiple times in the past, for a 3-year renewal of my existing contract. You can, as a board, can continue just with my existing, the 2 years remaining on the contract as well, but I don't know that that's in my best interest, and frankly, I don't know that's in the best interest of the school district, and so I would surely propose a 3-year renewal that you would accept and consider action during your work session. I think it's too late in this evening to really be talking about this from my perspective, but it surely could be action that you consider during your work session later on this month.
It's a shocking development. Would you,
Yes, it is.
you know, I was just kind of getting ready to kind of state my, and just kind of get to wrapping this thing up. Would this agreement be willing for you to talk about at the next work session?
Yes, I'd be happy to speak about that in more detail in my reasoning. But what I didn't anticipate, I mean, and I fully support this board and the differences of opinion that are here, and I'm not disagreeing with those at all. But part of my job description is also to read the board and to also understand when there is, I think, energy for something and when there's not energy for something. Very similar to the equity policy that I proposed to you a year and a half ago. I think, Tom, the phrase you used in our conversation is landed with a thump on the desk of the board. It didn't go anywhere. And so at that point, I said, I think it's in the best interest to back off on that. I'm feeling the same way right now with this.
I was feeling something different.
And that's understandable, Tom.
Okay, good
I
enough.
fully do
No, I
understand
will-
that, but
okay.
my professional reflection on what I'm hearing from the board, we have at least three board members who have stated publicly that they disagree philosophically with this procedure, or this higher back option, even though it's going to be a state law very soon, just causes me to pause and to say, I just don't think it's in the best interest of the school district for me to consider this approach at this time. So again, I respectfully withdraw both of those from your consideration.
I'm going to respectfully ask if you reconsider that,
Yeah, me
because my statement that I find it interesting that I disagree with the idea, and that should be settled at the state, wasn't, but now that, but those are the rules that the state operates under. That's where we talk.
Understood.
And I've been very reassured by a very competent lawyer that this is not setting a
Right.
dangerous precedent.
Yeah.
And I'm prepared to prove it, aren't they? So there you go. I don't know if we're trying, if anybody else wants to commit to
I
this
was just
change.
getting ready to
Well, I
say that
do,
I think
too.
that it is in the Silver Falls School District best interest that Andy stay for at least a year.
Yep.
So that,
Yeah.
I wanted to just
Right.
make sure that that was on the record.
I was just trying to let things go, so,
Yeah, no, I agree. You know, it's, we've been a high-performing district based on your guidance and your leadership. And this is something that the state offers. You've worked hard for it. This is your opportunity. This is your money. And I think it's in the best interest of the school district to keep you, Andy, and keep you happy.
Understood.
Also, too, we've got a new assistant superintendent coming in that's gonna need some guidance. And for a wholesale change at this point makes no sense whatsoever. It's gonna be a big pair of shoes to fill when Dandy leaves. I mean, that's gonna be a big hole. But I would also like you to reconsider that statement.
Understood. And Ron, I'm
I would
defaulting
too.
to my contract renewal, just a regular contract renewal that I would ask of the Silver Falls Board. I just believe it's in the best interest at this time,
And that's
based
why
upon
you-
what I've heard this evening.
And that's why you are the high character individual that you are. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well,
Okay.
I'd like to respond.
I don't know if there's anything to respond to.
Anything more to add, yeah.
Well, I think I just wanted him to know that I follow them and hope you reconsider. I think I just needed to learn a lot more about how the process works. And I was asking just process.
there's
So,
no more.
well, you guys got to talk to him, and I think I should have the opportunity to. So I just didn't, these are just all thoughts that came to me when I was researching everything this weekend. And just making sure that everything worked for you and everything worked for the district. And that's my job. My job as a board member is to do that. And so, honestly, I hope that my document didn't put you in that position to have to reconsider or to withdraw. And I just want to tell you that because we had Lisa here, we're asking questions just to make sure that we were doing it correctly. And that's it. So I hope that you weren't
Shelley, my response is to the entire board conversation, not specifically to you.
okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay,
Okay?
moving on.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
I'll step back for a little
Yeah,
while.
see you in a bit. Okay. Next up, let's recognize the outgoing board members, Tim Roth and Ron Valoff. They are retiring. Silence, please. We have a long meeting coming up. Tim, you've got one more meeting. Well, maybe two or three if we count the length of this one. But I didn't have, there's so much going on, I didn't have time to really think about any prepared remarks. But one thing that I will always remember about Tim is the way he visited schools, always. And I need to do better at that. I need to be more like Tim. I haven't done that. I visited very few schools. I need to be more like Tim. Thank you. And we'll just start with Tim. Does anybody else like to say anything for Tim before we move on to Ron?
Well, I'll say thank you. I mean, it's been a lot of years you've served, and I've only done it not even a year, and I know how much work it is. So I really do appreciate the time you've spent visiting schools, researching topics, discussing issues publicly, and it was a lot of work. I appreciate it.
I just wanted to say thank you very much. I've learned quite a bit from you in the last 2 years. So, short time, but I wish you well. And happy retirement. You're welcome.
Tim, you've always been the voice of reason and a stabilizing force on the board since I've been here. And I just admire you. I admire the way you conduct yourself, how you've chaired the board, been the vice chair, and the wisdom that you impart, month in and month out. And so hopefully I've learned something from my interaction with you these last 4 years. And I got to tell you, I must be doing something wrong because since I've got here, you've become more handsome. After 14 years on the board, he's become more handsome, and yet 4 years I've lost hair and got a gray beard. There's something wrong with the process here, so.
We can talk later.
But 14 years of servitude is beyond my comprehension. And the words I have really don't express how much I care for what you've done, you know, my love for you and your family for all the years of sacrifice and you've given, Tim, to the community. So thank you very much, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I don't know, this is kind of crazy. I think Tim's been on the board for most of the years I've lived in Silverton, so it's gonna be hard. Always a trustworthy face to see, and the grab the bull by the horns leadership I've really appreciated during my first 2 years. You've been really great, and even when there's a mistake, I appreciate that you step forward to take action, and so I really want to say that that's something that I can learn from you, and you're super reflective, and you even attended an equity training with me, and I really appreciated that because you're open to new things and new ideas and wanting to understand things, even though you've been doing it for 14 years. So thank you for your leadership.
Oh, please, of course.
I just, really quick, I've been thinking about this and trying to write some things down to say, but I was on a tractor planting beans today, so it didn't happen. But first off, I want to thank my family, too, my wife and my kids. I'm sorry. Because there's been a lot of meetings, a lot of late nights, a lot of time away from home, and without their support, it wouldn't have worked. So thank you. Sorry. And I also want to say that this is an awesome school district. I know there's issues. I know there's stuff that's not perfect. It never will be perfect. But this is the best school district in the state. And that's because of the people, that's because of our kids, for one thing. We have awesome kids. It's because of the people we have working here who work endlessly for the benefit of kids. And there are so many positive things happening in this district every day. And it's just, I think that that's something that we need to reflect on more. It's just, because it's true. I mean, there are more opportunities for kids in this district now than there ever have been. A 90% graduation rate is just, I mean, for 2 or 3 years in a row. It's amazing. And that stuff doesn't happen by accident. That stuff is intentional from administration on down. The teachers, the classified people, everybody working with the same goal in mind to get those kids to walk across the stage of graduation. And that's what makes this such a special place, is so many people. And if I can, just a little bit of words of advice, not even advice, just my thoughts from the heart. Trust the people at this table. Trust our administrators. These people work tirelessly for kids. Their jobs, you couldn't pay me enough to do their job, to be sitting in their chairs. And I really realized that when I was chairman and worked real closely with the superintendent, Andy. You couldn't pay me to put up with the stuff they have to put up with. So, and they make mistakes? Sure, they do. Well, maybe not Andy, but no, of course they do. They're human, everybody makes mistakes. But they deserve our trust. And always keep kids first. Keep kids first. Sometimes it seems like we get, and especially the last few years, I don't know, I think it might be the political climate nationally, or something, I'm not even sure what it is, but sometimes it seems like we as a board, we get so bogged down in just stuff, and accusations, and accusations about different things going on, and processes, and all that stuff is important. There needs, you need to go through all that stuff, but it seems like it takes away, I think in a lot of ways it takes away from the conversations that we could be having about kids and the things that this district can do to benefit kids. So that's all I have to say. And, thank you for your support, everybody. It's been a good one.
So I'm going to motion for Jonathan to carry Tim on his shoulders out the door tonight.
Ron, it's comments just like that that we're gonna miss.
Yeah.
Always a little bit of levity, a little bit of wisdom at times, at moments where, yeah, that's it. I'm gonna miss that. Somebody else? We'll go this way, like we did last time.
I'm going to say, again, thanks. I haven't gotten to work with you super long, but it's been fun. I think that you've had a lot of insights that have been helpful to me in the year that I've been on the board. And you enjoy whatever you're going to do next, right? So, not go to meetings Monday night.
Interpretive dance.
Right.
We don't have to come to that, do we?
I got 3 minutes, right? Public comment, okay.
No, Ron, I have so appreciated you these last few years, and the last 4 years you've been on here. You have a way of saying things that you're fair to people. You just bring things down to a good level. I've hesitated to say this, but I've always been impressed that you have the nicest way of telling somebody that they really don't know what they're talking about. And I say that, kind of in jest and jokingly.
Sure.
But I say that to illustrate the fact that you're just a nice guy, and you are very polite to people, and you're just always on the up and up. I really appreciate that. And your concern for kids is top of the charts. So, thank you.
You ready? She's putting on boxing gloves right now.
No, that's actually not true. So, Ron, the first time I ever really got to know Ron was out at Bend when we went to the summer conference for board members. And it was my first year, and I think we'd gone to a couple of classes together. We just kind of really were able to, it was just really nice to meet. I know his son, and through junior baseball organization JBO, when we created an umpire league. We were trying to get boys from our local community to be umpires instead of bringing them in from Salem. And my son and his son, Ben, they umpired for us. And so it was just really nice to get to know their family, and then also on the board, it's been really fun. But it was really fun out in Bend. It was a very memorable weekend out there, going to conferences and things like that, and learning so much about everything. But it was good. It was fun. So thank you for the 2 years. I've learned a lot from you, and it's been a really good time. So thank you for your insight and all of that stuff. You're welcome. Yeah.
Okay, I had a little time to write a few things down here. Thank you, Ron. Thank you for your service and your friendliness and levity and commitment to board development, and I am really going to miss your sense of humor. Thank you.
Thanks, appreciate it. Yeah, it's been fun. I got a minute? I got 3 minutes.
You got 3.
3 minutes. Okay.
I might give you 5.
And I've shared this with members of the board, administrative staff, and public that'll listen. When I first got on the board, I didn't understand what was involved with public education, other than being a student that gave grief to all my teachers growing up. When I joined the board and really got to understand what happens at the board level, what our teachers are experiencing, what our principals are experiencing, what our administrative staff goes through, what society expects of them, I was in awe. And the first thing I thought of, what am I doing here? It was really a scary moment thinking about the responsibility that we have as a board. But what continued to buoy me and strengthen me and keep me going were you, the parents. I mean, I look at the kids in our district, they are phenomenal. They really are, and that's a direct representation of you who are sitting in our audience, because you guys all care. Now, we may not necessarily agree with how we're going to get to the same position, We may not have the same viewpoint. We've all been raised differently, right? We have different life experiences. But there's so much wisdom in this room, in this community. It's a beautiful thing. And so I feel very fortunate to be a part of it. Again, I've made mistakes. I've said a few things that I totally regret, or could have been said or voiced differently. And of course, I get called on that and get humbled. What's left of my ego, which is pretty much non-existent at this point anyway, after 27 years of marriage and 2 teenage kids. So there's not a whole lot left. But I really consider myself a better individual from being on the board and interacting with Jennifer and Shelley and Tom and Tim and Invisible Irv and Jonathan. I really have. And I'm excited for what the new board is going to bring to the community. I really am. I'm looking forward to the next 4 years of being able to sit in that audience, if there's a hot topic, to participate. So that's going to be pretty interesting, right? And as far as maybe just a couple things for the two new board members coming on, really just a couple pieces of maybe advice. Number one is, there's 2 books that the OSBA hands out to help with our knowledge of boardsmanship, and one is called Boardsmanship, and the other one is the policies and the procedures, and then the roles and the responsibilities. And if you dive into those right away, if you're going to participate in July, we have that summer boot camp coming up for what Shelley was just talking about. It's a great way to really understand what it is to be a board member. So setting that foundation, and that really helped me as setting that foundation to move forward to be hopefully beneficial to the district. And the other piece of advice, and this is, I have to remind myself this all the time, and this is for everyone on the current board, the new board members coming forward, and even the members of the audience here, is don't listen to understand, but don't listen to respond, but listen to understand. Yeah, I just switched that around. Sorry, John. I know, what the heck? Oh, it's pumpkin time. So anyway, so that's it. I want to thank everyone here, members of the board, Andy, Dandy, everyone. And I had a great time. It's been very humbling, and I just want to thank each and every one. And Debbie, my wife. That would have been bad.
Oh, wow.
I was wondering, Rob.
You're going to leave me out there hanging, man. That's not cool.
I was just waiting thinking, man.
I would have been rooming with you guys tonight, Jonathan.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Okay, that was the first page. We are going to the second page. Public comment, limited to discussion and action items, and to the approved 2019 and 20 fiscal year budget. Would anybody like to comment? Yeah, please.
I want to thank you all for your service. I think just this evening shows how much work it is, and your time, free time, is very important. I've only lived in Silverton 2 years, but thank you. Mr. Belando, I want to thank you for deciding to withdraw the proposal. I think that was the right thing to do. My background, I've had 30 years of experience in the public sector in Oregon, both with K-12, community colleges, and the judicial department. And when I decided to retire from my job as executive director of the Oregon State Bar, my husband had been retired for 6 years, so it was about time. I gave my board 12 months. I gave them 12-month notice so they could decide, do I want to hire somebody from in? Do I want to hire somebody from outside? And they had the opportunity to do that. If that person, the day before I retired, said, I'm not coming, I would have stepped in and I would have done it. The history of this law about rehiring retirees was designed for emergencies. It was designed for the example I just said. It was designed for somebody on maternity leave. It was designed for somebody leaving in the middle of the year and you didn't want to go through a process, so somebody could step in. In my 30-year career, I never heard of anyone asking for the retirement to be coupled with rehiring. Now, I know it happens, but I never encountered it. I think it happened once with the 8 years of the community colleges and because somebody suddenly had to leave a position. That's what it's for. I'm really disappointed that this law has been, allows this. And I talked to Representative Lewis today, and I'd really like to change it. Because when you hire somebody in a position and they're retired, then the person over here who could get that job doesn't have a chance. The person underneath them who got the job, down to that teacher who wants her first job. So I think you need to understand it takes a job away from Oregon. That's what it does. So the other point I wanted to make was Social Security is different. You collect Social Security because you've paid in. It's not a job that's going to somebody else. If I collect Social Security and I'm retired, I get them both. But if you rehire a retiree, you're taking a job away from Oregonians. And 1 in 10 retirees is doing that now. And frankly, I think it's, except in unusual circumstances, it's not appropriate. Thank you for letting me share my opinion. And thank you again for all your work.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Raymond Kaiser, I signed in at the back, 828 Sun Valley Court, Silverton. And part of what I was going to say has been kind of taken care of by your decisions here tonight. But I've been I was on the Silverton Elementary School Board for 13 years prior to unification. I served on the Oregon School Boards Association Board of Directors for 4 years, and then I got to teach 18, 19 years at the secondary level. So I've seen both sides, the teaching side, the administration side, and then maybe even making policy at the Oregon School Boards Association. And so the comments that I was going to suggest that you wait and evaluate the proposal with respect to Andy's retirement, but now you're going to wait a year for that, I assume, if who knows how that will turn out. But there's a very important item, I believe, that I didn't hear discussed at all. Well, there's two things. One was, and I'm not familiar with the grievance that the attorney was talking about, except that someone asked, "What now?" And then the response of one way or another was, well, it just kind of goes away. And that's not true. It most certainly is not true that it just goes away. Because in addition to having good students and good staff, and administration as well, the individuals who are working in the district know that grievances like this are going on, and in spite of what the arbitrator says, well, in this case it was some kind of a bias, and you have to define that term. But it only goes away maybe if the person who filed the grievance leaves. In this case, I guess that did happen. But it didn't go away for those individuals who are still working in the district. And so the issue that I did not hear discussed with respect to contracts and the whole bit is staff morale. 30 seconds left. Okay, thank you. And I think that's a very important one. And so a comment to Andy is if the administrators are misbehaving in whatever way or not, the buck stops with you. I think that's an important consideration for the board. And so you will be looking in the next year about a search committee, I assume. And so that's another thing that you want to consider the interaction of the search committee with the sitting superintendent or not. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I got the red card. Tim, I'm going to take 30 more seconds. Time. No, I'm going to be nice. Ron, I thank you for your service. I know what it's like. Tim, you visited my classroom many times. I really appreciated that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, would anyone else like to address the board? Okay. Let's close that public comment period. And so now it's time to close the budget hearing. That was the last time to comment on that. Action items. Some of them got taken off, so I'm just making sure I'm not. So the first one is to approve the 2019 and 20 terms of compensation and benefit package for administrative and confidential employees. Do I have a motion?
So move for approval.
Got a motion for approval. Have a second?
I'll second.
Got a motion for approval and a second. Any discussion?
I just wanted to make sure we didn't need any discussion because we haven't discussed it. We got a report, 3 of you were there?
Yes. Jonathan, Tom, and I.
Okay.
Yep, we got a report. The stuff was in the packet, and I guess we're good. Yeah. Okay. Okay, we got a motion for approval and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Letter B. Approve Woodburn Construction as the general contractor for the state seismic rehabilitation project at Mark Twain Elementary School in the amount of $1,328,455. Do I have a motion for approval?
Moved.
Got a motion, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay,
I said Jonathan.
yeah, I'll just say a little bit. These seismic grants have really helped so many of our schools. Scotts Mills, Butte Creek, Victor Point, I'm missing a few. But these are fantastic. Good work on these. So that's my comment. Any other comment?
Yeah, I would just say that I also appreciate everybody who spent time trying to make this, especially this one, work, because it's been a long time.
Yep. Okay, any more? Okay. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We're not going to approve the retirement, and we're not going to, items C and D are withdrawn. Okay, E, approve resolution number 610, 2019, transfer of appropriation in the general fund, fiscal year 2018-19. Do I have a motion for approval?
Yeah, I'll motion for approval.
Do we have to read it?
Do I got to read it?
I'll read it.
Please.
I move that the resolution be adopted to transfer budget appropriations to the general fund. Is that it? Is that all I have to read?
Andy, I think, was that the legalese we needed?
Yes, the title of the resolution is sufficient.
Okay.
I move that resolution to transfer the appropriations to the general fund be approved for fiscal year 2018-19.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, action item F, approve resolution adopting the budget, levying taxes and making appropriations for fiscal year 2019 and 20. We got a motion for approval?
So moved.
Do we have to read that one too?
Got to read that one too? Read the whole thing, Tim.
I move to approve the resolution adopting budget, levying taxes, and making appropriations for fiscal year 2019-20.
Okay, we have a motion for approval. How about a second?
I'll second.
That was Shelley. Okay, we got a motion for approval and a second. All in favor, please signify, discussion. Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, we're going to adjourn to executive session under ORS 1926602H to consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed, and ORS 1926602F, to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection. Okay, let's take it. Okay, let's return to regular session. Any more business? Shelley?
Yes, I just had something to read for board reports. I just wanted to mention that I was honored to attend the 2019 Silverton High School graduation this year. It was a wonderful evening, listening to the unique student speeches and the tradition of walking across the stage to receive that very special diploma. I also wanted to pay special attention to Mr. Dick Ford, the last known pilot to have dropped troops on Normandy. I believe he's 97 years old. How fortunate we are as a district to have the opportunity to celebrate him. Thank you to all who were able to make that happen on our remembrance of D-Day.
Thank you. Any other business? Meeting adjourned.